Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Hayward City Council. I am going to call this meeting to order and ask Councilmember Zermano to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand if you're able. Begin. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Good evening. Councilmember Andrews.
Present.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Present.
Councilmember Marquez.
Present.
Councilmember Salinas.
Present.
Councilmember Wahab.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Zermano.
I am present.
Mayor Halliday.
Here.
Thank you.
And that brings us to our closed session announcement. Council did meet in closed session this evening on 3 items. I'm going to ask our City Attorney, Mr. Lawson, to report on the first 2.
Greetings, Mayor and Council. The Council convened in closed session this evening at 5 p.m. pursuant to posted notice. And with all members present and no public comments, the Council discussed the following 3 items. 1, Cisneros versus City of Hayward. The Council discussed pending litigation and took no reportable action. 2, conference with labor negotiators. The Council met with its labor negotiators regarding all bargaining groups and took no reportable action. And 3, over to the Mayor.
And the Mayor, the third item was regarding the ongoing evaluations of our 3 council-appointed officers, and the discussion involved all 3, and the Council took no reportable action.
And Mayor, the closed session adjourned at 6:48 p.m.
Thank you. And all members of the Council were present. With that, that brings us to public comments this evening. Madam City Clerk, are you aware of any members of the public who wish to speak? We have a few people in the chambers here.
Yes, Madam Mayor. We have public speakers. We have, I believe now, 3 via Zoom, and we have 3 in-person speakers.
All right. So I see that we do. We'll go first to the people here in the chambers, and I will call John Varga.
There we go. Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. It's my sincere privilege to be speaking with you this evening during Public Service Recognition Week on behalf of the hardworking members of IFPTE Local 21, together with our union siblings in SEIU 1021 and HAME. I say again, this is Public Service Recognition Week, which means that we are particularly mindful this week of the fact that the City of Hayward employees do the work that makes the city work. And when the city works, it means Hayward residents benefit from all the services that the city provides. IFPTE Local 21 members work throughout the city so that programs and services run efficiently and effectively. They inspect buildings, ensuring the safety of Hayward residents. They staff the library and provide safe spaces for lifelong learning. They work tirelessly to keep the city's technology running smoothly, and that's just to name a few. With all that they are asked to do, it's no wonder that Hayward's workers can at times become exhausted. We ask the City Council to keep this in mind as it considers the city's budget and budget priorities. It is imperative that the city staff up and fill vacancies if it is going to continue providing city services at the high standard that folks have become accustomed to without burning out. Hayward employees make Hayward great, and working for the City of Hayward should be a job that provides fair wages and benefits, an opportunity to retire with dignity, and to be respected in the workplace. And in fact, the city has been and can continue to be a force for good.
That was a comment
Thank
there.
you. I agree. It has been and can continue to be a force for good in our community, not only in the services it provides, but it's an ability to lift people up through good paying jobs. As the city considers its budget priorities, we remind the council that privatization and outsourcing of work runs counter to that goal. And in honor of Public Service Recognition Week, we ask the council to work towards curbing that practice in favor of filling city vacancies, providing training and opportunity for development, and keeping taxpayers' money here in Hayward. We are very, very proud to be working in the service of Hayward residents in the city of Hayward. And we look forward to continuing to do so in partnership with the members of this council and the mayor, because we know that Hayward works best when it's Hayward together. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And I'm sure that I speak for all my colleagues in saying we do very much appreciate the service that is provided every day by all of you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Next we have Danny, oh, wait a minute. We have Suzanne Phyllis.
Mayor Halliday, we have Danny.
Okay, sorry, Suzanne. I thought you took the name away really quickly there, but Danny, okay, Suzanne, why don't you come up? Suzanne Phillips, and we'll go to Danny
Hi,
next.
Suzanne Phyllis. I'm a Hayward resident and also a Hayward worker. Tonight, I'm here representing SEIU, Local 21 for Clerical and Chapter. So it's Public Service Recognition Week, and I'm here with my coalition members, Local 21 and Haim, just speaking to the services provided by the Hayward workers. I do live in South Hayward, and as I come up Mission and I see the unprecedented amount of development going on, I think about the new housing and the new retail, and I think about the increased demand for services, and that means we're going to need more staff because we're already overworked and oftentimes can't get our work done fast enough to meet the needs of the community, and we have a lot of burnout in several of our important divisions. So I was looking at the budget, and I listened to the city manager give her her citywide Zoom call meeting. The budget is strong, and it looks like we're in pretty good shape with our unfunded liabilities, which is good. I want that too, because I want to retire someday and have my benefits. So I do appreciate all that, but I just want, as you guys review the budget and think about your numbers, think about the increase in demand for services as we move forward. Think about, you know, when a worker has to leave to promote or to, you know, get ahead in their career, we lose experience and training and years of service and usually a dedicated employee. So we're encouraging you to keep these people here, keep them happy, so that we can keep providing the strong services that Hayward employees are known for. So I think that's pretty much it for me. I just want you to be thoughtful as you move forward and keep us in mind. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we'll have Danny Magalhaes. I probably didn't say that right, so maybe you could say it.
I tried to help by writing it phonetically on there this time. It's Danny McGallis.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and our colleagues. My name is Danny McGallis, and I am maintenance supervisor at the City of Hayward's Water Pollution Control Facility. I'm also vice president of Haim. On behalf of Haim, we'd like to give a shout out and express appreciation for the hard work and service that our Hayward workers provide to our city residents during Public Service Recognition Week. The first week of May is set aside to recognize us, and we really appreciate that. The city does a good job. We are proud to work alongside all of our dedicated and talented colleagues across the city. We are also here today to urge the city to remember Hayward workers when it considers the city's budget, ensuring that Hayward workers have the adequate support they need to deliver council priorities and serve this great city. In order to provide excellent service, it is vital that the city takes action to adequately staff and fill vacancies so that workloads are manageable, equitable, and that we can retain staff and avoid burnout. We also support the concerns of our coalition colleagues and urge the city to work toward curbing privatization and outsourcing work so Hayward jobs stay in Hayward. We are proud to work in public service, and we look forward to working in partnership with City Council to accomplish great things for Hayward, because Hayward is a better place when we all work together. It's good to see you all again. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to see you too. Now we're going to go to Zoom, and we have Manuel Shafi.
Good evening. My name is Manal Shafi, and I'm proud to serve as a Community and Government Relations Coordinator at Bloom Energy, a clean, resilient energy company founded right here in Silicon Valley, with nearly 800 local employees and currently hiring more than 300 additional manufacturing careers. Over the past 2 years, we have learned more than ever the vital role of our frontline hospital and healthcare workers, all putting our health before their own throughout the COVID-19 crisis. In recognition of their selfless work, Bloom Energy hosted the inaugural Stars and Strides community run last year and raised more than $250,000 to benefit the Valley Medical Center Foundation. I'm here to invite you to come and build on our success on Saturday morning, July 2nd, for the annual Stars and Strides community run to support and celebrate our frontline hospital workers and the patients they serve. Our ambitious goal for the second annual Stars and Strides run will be more attainable with your help and participation. First, our financial goal, to raise and donate $350,000 to the Valley Medical Center Foundation as they support 3 county hospitals and 14 healthcare clinics, which collectively provide healthcare services to more than 1 million of our neighbors annually, 85% of whom are low-income members of our community. Second, our participation goal is for 2,500 paid participants in the Armature Systems 10K Run, the Silicon Valley 5K Run or Walk, or the HP Inc. Kids Fun Run. Third, our volunteer goal is 400 caring volunteers pre-race or on race day to further ensure that participants have a fun, safe, and healthy experience. Our Bloom Energy Stars and Strides community run will start and finish in Discovery Meadow in downtown San Jose, and I'm inviting you to join us. If you are unable to attend physically, you can still participate in our Bank of America Step Up in Spirit virtual run or walk. Tonight, we have 3 requests. First, please register yourself and your family. Registration is easy at starsandstridesrun.com. For elected leaders, please sign up under the California Water Service Elected Official Executive 5K Challenge. Second, please reach out to your own database of community members. We have sample texts you can consider using to make it easy. Third, we would be honored to work with you and your professional staff to be included on any online communications between now and race day. Over the past 2 years, we've realized how critical healthcare workers are to our communities. We now have the opportunity to gather, to celebrate, and support them on July 2nd. Please join us and spread the word throughout your communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Brianne Elizari.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Good evening. My name is Brianne Elizari, and I have been with the City of Hayward for nearly 9 years. 7 of those years have been as a permanent, fully benefited employee. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of IFPTE Local 21 and in solidarity with SEIU 1021 and HAIM. As my colleagues who have spoken before me have mentioned, this week is Public Service Recognition Week. And this week in particular, we are mindful of the service Hayward workers provide to our community. Over the past 2 years, we have witnessed Hayward workers' perseverance and unwavering commitment to the community. We are appreciative of the work our colleagues perform and are proud to work alongside the dedicated members of IFPTE Local 21, SEIU 1021, and the HAIM unions. Tonight, we are speaking with one voice when we ask the City Council to honor our service when it considers the city's budget and priorities. In order to continue to provide excellent service, it is imperative that the city staff up and fill vacancies. A fair and equitable Distribution of the work is the only way to ensure Hayward workers are not burnt out and can continue to serve this great city. We remind the council that Hayward employees make Hayward great, and that working for the city of Hayward should be a job that provides fair wages and benefits, an opportunity to retire with dignity, and to be respected in the workplace. The city can be a force of good in our community, not only in the services it provides, but in the ability to lift people up through good jobs. The continued use of contract and temp employees without providing a pathway to permanent and benefited employment is contradictory to that mission. And in honor of Public Service Recognition Week, we ask that the council work toward curbing that practice in favor of filling city vacancies, providing training and opportunity for development, and keeping taxpayers' money here in Hayward. On a personal note, 9 years ago, I was in a temporary position with the city. It was the only opportunity open at the time. And I was working 8 hours a week. My assignment was only for 6 months. The team around me saw how much value I added, not just to the department I was working with, but to the city as a whole. They advocated for me and helped me build a pathway for me from a temporary worker into a permanent employee. We need more stories like mine in Hayward. I'm proud to be working in service to the public and look forward to continuing to do so in partnership with the City Council, because Hayward is best when we all work together. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Michelle G.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Halliday and City Council members. My name is Michelle G, and I have been a Hayward Public Library employee and a member of IFPTE Local 21 for the last 3.5 years. As mentioned, this week is Public Service Recognition Week, and this week in particular is important to be mindful of the service Hayward workers provide to our city residents. We're so grateful for the work our colleagues perform and are proud to work alongside the members of Local 21, SEIU, and HAME unions. We're speaking with one voice tonight when we ask the City Council to honor our service when it considers the city's budget and priorities. In order to continue to provide excellent services, it's important that the city fill vacancies where needed. A fair and equitable distribution of work is the only way to ensure Hayward workers are not burnt out. Hayward employees are part of what make Hayward great, and working for the city of Hayward should be a job that provides fair wages and benefits, an opportunity to retire with dignity, and to be respected in the workplace. The city can be a force for good in our community, not only in the services it provides, but in its ability to lift people up through good jobs. The continued use of temp and contract employees is antithetical to that mission. And in honor of Public Service Recognition Week, we ask that council work towards curbing that practice in favor of filling city vacancies and providing pathways to permanent and benefited employment. I'm proud to be working in service of the public and look forward to continuing to do so in partnership with the City Council and our fellow unions. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Jade.
Oh, sorry, I meant to lower my hand. I want to speak on agenda item 12. I think I was just confused earlier about the speakers kind of talking about budgeting and finances, but can I get a confirmation that we have not talked about agenda item 12 yet?
No, we haven't gotten to item 12 yet, so we'll.
Perfect, thank you so much.
We'll list you under item number 12 and come back to you. Thank you. And sorry for the confusion. Okay. So with that, I don't think we have any other public comments on items not on our agenda, correct?
I do have a public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, Councilmember Wahab.
Sorry.
That's okay.
One, I do just want to, commend all the work that staff has done throughout the city, year round, let alone just this week that we are trying to acknowledge folks. But genuinely, you guys build the city, you guys work for the city, you guys work for the residents, you guys are pushing Hayward forward. So I really commend just all the work that you guys do. I would have to echo some of the comments. So to our city manager, and I know that this is definitely a priority in the coming months and hopefully within this year. We do have a huge amount of vacancies across different departments, from our public safety departments to our maintenance to our pretty much you name it. So hopefully we can fill that out. And if we are going to be doing recruitments, and I know that, I've heard other council members also advocate for some of this, but I would like to also see that we do internal, promotions and just, make sure that we are building a long journey for every single Hayward employee to be continuously promoted in Hayward and stay in Hayward. So those are my comments, and I do appreciate everybody for speaking, and thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I think we can move on to, that's no further public speakers. I think we can move on to our next item, which is comments from our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And before they leave the council chambers, I just wanted to say also express my gratitude to every single employee in the city of Hayward and express my gratitude for Public Service Recognition Week. In past years, we've done a proclamation on this week, and we missed that this year, but we did bring back the pancake breakfast for all of our employees, which we will have later this week. We've been on a 2-year hiatus from that, and so really excited to celebrate with our employees this week to recognize all of their efforts, and we've got some great prizes that we'll be giving away.
You're talking about real pancakes served in person and not virtual pancakes?
Actual pancakes. And we have found out that the price of bacon has escalated dramatically during the pandemic, but we still managed to figure it out and put it on the menu because it is a crowd pleaser. So we're excited to see everyone on Thursday morning. And I just want to echo the concerns. I too express my concerns. Did my mic go out? Is it still working? Okay, sorry. My concerns about the number of vacancies that we have in the city and the continued pressures for additional projects and things that keep getting added to the workload. It's one of the reasons that we put the strategic roadmap together with the city council to help really focus our efforts and to try and really help identify what the priorities are. So if we do have vacancies, we can know where to pause on certain things and what still need to move forward. So I will just say that during the upcoming budget hearing, you'll hear a request for some additional staffing in HR, which is kind of the first step in the process to getting all of our vacancies filled. We currently do have a few vacancies in the department. Plus, when you compare our staffing in HR to other surrounding jurisdictions, we are vastly understaffed in our HR department and have been for a number of years. So we'll be focused on that this year and then really looking organization-wide and over the coming years. I think it's a good time to start thinking about, as we look at the growth, what are our future projections for service needs and kind of what are the expectations of the council and the community. So I appreciate everyone's comments this evening and just want to echo my gratitude to every last city employee and express my own gratitude at being able to serve this community for the past 12 years, which is kind of hard to imagine. I've been here that long now, but it's been an amazing time and just feel so honored to serve the Hayward community and to live here as well. So appreciate all of everyone's comments tonight. So that was the first comment, and I'll just then now you guys can.
Say before they that I also want to express apologies on behalf of the council for us not having that proclamation, but this year. But after all, you can't eat a proclamation, but you can eat pancakes. So I hope that helps to make up for it. And sorry to interrupt your comments.
No,
but
that's totally fine.
Thank you all. We, on behalf of all of my colleagues, I know we very much appreciate and value your service, and we'll do what we can when we come to the budget discussion.
And then the second comment, I just wanted to announce that the voting has officially opened in Hayward's first People's Budget Participatory Budgeting Process. That was a lot of budget words. It's now open, and the entire community is invited to determine which community proposed projects should receive a share of the $350,000 of funding that the City Council set aside for this participatory budget process. Any Hayward resident age 10 or older can vote, and no registration or identification is required. There is an opportunity to vote online, and we will have a number of opportunities to vote in person. Saturday, May 7th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Mia's Dream Playground at Tennyson Park. Saturday, May 14th, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Hayward Farmers Market on B Street in downtown. Saturday, May 14th, 1 to 4 p.m. at the Southland Mall by the movie theater. Sunday, May 15th, 11 to 2 at Kennedy Park on Hesperian Boulevard. And then for students only, we will be having special voting sessions at Hayward, Mount Eden, and Tennyson High Schools. So we will be having staff out there in those locations. In the people's budget, the city has been divided into 6 sectors. Each sector has been allocated between $50,000 to $70,000, depending on population size and income level. And you can visit the city's website for more information. We have had a very extensive process over the past 5 months where neighborhood delegates and other community members conducted outreach to solicit ideas and have used these ideas to create project proposals. In each sector, the top 2 voted projects will receive funding, and then the next voted projects will receive any remaining funds that are available. Voting will close on May 15th, and if you have any questions about the proposals or the voting process, you can email community@hayward-ca.gov, or you can call 510-583-4227. So very excited to have that kicked off. And that's my comments for this evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, and don't forget to vote. And I assume that includes us, too, since we all live here. Great. Hope everybody will look at that, and there are really some good projects on that list, too. And I really appreciate all the work that the staff put into it and that the community put into coming up with the projects. So with that, we are ready to move on to our action items this evening. First, we have our consent calendar, items 1 through 9. Is there anyone who would like to pull an item off? I'm not seeing anyone, so I would entertain a motion for
Mayor,
items.
I apologize. I just
Madam
wanted
City
to,
Manager?
I know that there is, I think, one community or public member who may want to speak on an item, and I just want to make sure. Yeah, there she goes. She raised her hand. So I just want to make sure she had an opportunity because I know she wanted to speak
Okay.
on.
Oh, yeah, now I do see that we do have one. Okay. And that would be Kimberly Hartz.
Thank you. My name is Kimberly Hartz, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of Washington Hospital Healthcare System. And I want to thank the Mayor and the Hayward City Council for considering our request for support for being a local trauma center that is on the consent calendar. I just want to take a couple minutes just to say that this is an important initiative for our community and for the mission of our healthcare system. For over a decade, our community has asked us to consider to be a trauma center. We have taken many steps to put in place the infrastructure that is necessary to be a trauma center. We have built a we opened in 2018 our Morris Hyman Critical Care Pavilion that has a 48-bed ICU and a 39-bed emergency room with 2 trauma bays. We've also worked with outside consultants to help us assess our operational readiness, and we know what the next steps are needed if we are so designated as a trauma center, really for all of South County. Our community really at this point has to travel north to receive trauma care, and during times of the day when the traffic patterns are difficult, this could take almost an hour to get to a local trauma center. Many are also having to travel south across county lines in order to receive trauma services. Our publicly elected board of directors is strongly behind this important initiative for our community, and I really thank you for the opportunity to potentially have your support for this very important initiative for our community and the members who we serve. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I do see Councilmember Andrews has her hand up.
Yes, I wanted to comment on item number 4.
Oh, okay.
Just wanted to thank Mr. Michael Shan for his service on the Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force and wish him the best in his future endeavors.
All right. We can keep this on the consent calendar, though, right? I mean, yeah, but thank you. And Councilmember Wahab?
Yes, I'll move all the items if Nobody else has comments.
All right, is there a second? Okay, so items 1 through 9 are moved by Councilmember Wahab, seconded by Councilmember Lamnin. And I will just say on the item number 9, which is the Washington Hospital Trauma Center item that Ms. Hart spoke on, that I think I appreciate this was brought to us. It's a decision that the County Board of Supervisors is going to make, but it will help people. It will help provide more opportunities and perhaps faster service in emergencies for people in Hayward, which is why the city manager and I agreed that it was a good idea to bring it forward. So with that, on the motion by Councilmember Wahab, seconded by Councilmember Lamnin on items 1 through 9, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Yes.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and the motion carries with 7 aye votes. Now, that brings us to item number 10, which is a work session on a proposed traffic impact fee and the Nexus study with that. And we will be hearing from Public Works Director Ameri, who's with us on Zoom this evening. Director Ameri.
Yes, thank you, and good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm really excited to be here this evening to present the city's proposed traffic impact fee. We haven't had a traffic impact fee ever. Traffic is one of the important considerations here in Hayward and has been for a long time. A team of city staff and consultants have been working on this project for some time, including our senior transportation engineer, Sharman Sola, who's here tonight, and Stephen Chang, an associate transportation planner. We have also received input from Paul Nguyen, our economic development manager, and also from our development services staff. I have to say that our assistant city manager, Jennifer Ott, has provided invaluable guidance and contributions to this process. So I have a long presentation tonight, and I'm going to start my PowerPoint. I should say that on the consultant side, Community Attributes perform financial feasibility analysis for us, and Michela Jellicoe of the firm is here to assist me in this presentation. Thank you, Michela. Next. So the agenda tonight is going to cover the city's goal and purpose for implementing a TIF, a process overview, and the extensive outreach that we've had to the stakeholder in the community, financial feasibility findings, staff recommendations, also discussing how we compare to other jurisdictions in the area, our TIF, the feedback that we have received from our stakeholders, the relationship between local transportation analysis that some larger projects require, and the TIF, and the next step and questions. Next, please. All right. The goals has been to address the cumulative impacts of growth on the city streets. We have a lot of different developments happening, especially now in the last few years, and some of them don't pay for the cumulative impact that they have on the city. By themselves, they're too small and they don't pay, but then cumulatively there is an impact. This is very important. We want to streamline the city transportation review process, hopefully make it less cumbersome, shorter in time, and easier on the development community. The goal is to avoid disincentivizing new development. We are a pro-housing, pro-development city, and we don't want to cause a disincentive by having a TIF. That is why we evaluate financial feasibility and looked at other jurisdictions. we also want to be very attentive to economic recovery in certain sectors, such as retail, such as restaurants and office. Next. So the process overview for the actual implementation, development and implementation of TIF was that we had to prepare a detailed nexus study to see, what are the projects that need to be improved. There are 100 intersections, there are 25 roadways that are included in TIF, and the nexus study came up with the maximum allowable fee under the law. That doesn't mean that we have to adopt the maximum fee, but we cannot exceed it. The fee can be set at any level below that maximum, with other considerations such as the feasibility study for the financial feasibility and see what kind of impact this fee is going to have on developments in the city. And again, like I said, looking at other jurisdictions and coming with an analysis. On the local transportation analysis side, or LTA, to use the initials, some larger projects require an LTA. This is going to, the intent at least, is to simplify the LTA process and integrate the fee with it to avoid, again, disincentivizing new development in the city. Next. Stakeholder outreach has been extensive for this project. We started with the first outreach to the Chamber of Commerce earlier this year in January. Then we had a news article in our stack that went to 65,000 subscribers in early February. Then we had outreach to our developer community by sending over 400 emails to them. We had a stakeholder presentation in mid-February. There were also information on LinkedIn that was shared by our by our economic development manager, Paul Nguyen, to over 1,400 followers. And then we went to Council Infrastructure Committee towards the end of February and received feedback from them. We had a presentation then to the Chamber of Commerce Government Relations Council on the 4th of March. And basically the input that I received from them was that the outreach to developers should have included personal outreach, not only emails, but calling all of them and basically informing of them of this. Based on that comment, next please, we decided to take the council, the Government Relations Council up on that. And we went ahead, received about 20 stakeholder information from the Chamber of Commerce. We looked at our own internal information and came up with another 20 for a total of 40 developers that work in Hayward or are working right now in Hayward. So we made personal outreach to them and invited them to come to a second stakeholder meeting. And of course, we had the other outreaches too by social media and by email. And we had a second stakeholder presentation on the last day of March and received some feedback. Then in mid-April, we went to Planning Commission. That was a public meeting and presented TIF to them and received their feedback, which I will discuss. Next. So the benefits of TIF, of course, there is some financial benefit to the city that we can use and fix our roads and intersection. But to the developer community, the advantage is that it brings certainty to the process. A developer is going to have access to a fee schedule that even before they submit their application, they can take a look at it and get a feel for what is their exposure in terms of TIF. So they can plan for the amount of fee, at least the approximate amount of fee that they have to pay if they are not certain about the number of units or the square footage of some of the industrial developments. And that the system-wide transportation improvement costs are spread across all new development. So when a development comes in and we know that there is an impact from this development on an intersection, they are not going to be solely responsible, at least not at first, to pay for all of the costs and then wait until there is a second and third development with the same impact to alleviate some of the upfront costs. So that is a benefit, a real benefit to the development community. It's certainly going to simplify the process too for developments that have, let's say, a local transportation analysis requirement or a report. The intersections and roadways that have been included already in TIF are excluded, don't have to be included in the LTA. This is going to have a reduction effect in the cost of preparing an LTA, by maybe up to 50%. And also it is going to reduce the time that the local transportation analysis is going to take to be prepared by again, up to half, from 12 weeks to 6 to 8 weeks. We are really excited about these benefits to the development community. Next. At this point, I'm going to turn this over to Michaela Jellicoe of Community Attributes to present the financial feasibility findings. Michaela?
Yeah, thank you, and good evening. So my firm, Community Attributes, and my team, we looked at a variety of sort of prototypical development types within Hayward to assess general development feasibility under current market conditions and how that might be impacted by the adoption and implementation of a TIF here in Hayward. So we've broken those into a couple categories: promising, possible, marginal, and challenge, sort of summarize our findings. We found that industrial warehouse has extremely strong regional demand, and Hayward's central location puts it in a good position, market position, for development feasibility. And we found positive residual land value through our modeling, which means that after accounting for developer return and all of the costs, there's still money left over to cover the cost of purchasing land and making that negotiation on purchasing land. So that's what we're looking for when we are assessing feasibility. We also looked at life sciences specifically, and while there's also strong regional demand for life sciences, this is classified as possible because development costs are very high for this product type, and they need very high rents, possibly upwards of $50 per square foot to cover those costs to see feasibility. So while it's still certainly a possible prototype development, it's a little bit less promising than your general industrial warehouse. Both residential types we found are marginal, but for different reasons. There's a very strong regional demand for housing. And in the single family category, you're definitely seeing some development, especially townhouse type development. You're seeing very strong sales prices, but we classified this as marginal because of high development in land costs that we're seeing right now, which can create challenges for some product types, while others will still be certainly feasible. Multifamily residential has some pretty strong impacts from the pandemic with ongoing eviction moratoria. We're seeing decreased lease rates during that time, or stagnating lease rates, and increased vacancy rates and credit loss, which creates some challenges for feasibility in this product type. But because of that very strong regional demand for housing, we still think it's a marginal feasibility and definitely has potential for future development in Hayward. And then the last three that we looked at were all challenged. I think that this might not be a huge surprise. Retail centers, including anchored retail centers, have an uncertain future due to the pandemic. And we're just seeing that the achievable lease rates aren't supported aren't supporting new construction. Now, that doesn't mean that all developments are infeasible. It just makes the overall situation a little bit more challenging. So some retail anchors can make that new retail development more feasible, but in general, we're seeing a very challenged environment. Restaurants seeing very similar trends to retail, but housing growth might support some incremental additions to the inventory in that development type. And then lastly, office is seeing continued weak market demand, and similarly, lease rates aren't supporting new construction. So with all of that in mind, staff put together a recommendation for the rates. And we can see in this chart, there's the maximum allowable, but as Director Ameri noted, you do not have to adopt the maximum. So staff is proposing a 70% reduction to the maximum allowable single family rate, which is about $3,475 per dwelling unit. And then for multifamily, retail, and office, because of those feasibility findings, we're recommending that those be waived or set at 0 for this at this time. And then general, industrial, and in distribution e-commerce, staff's recommending a 30% reduction on that maximum to 3,243 and 5,757 respectively per 1,000 square foot. So staff's recommending reducing residential rates by 70%, non-residential rates by 30%, postponing or waiving selected uses, multifamily, retail, and office in order to serve economic development and public purposes. We're including separate rate categories for different industrial uses, general industrial and distribution and e-commerce based on differences in traffic generation and the impacts created by new development for those different types. The staff recommendation includes exemptions for affordable housing consistent with the park and lieu fee, as well as ADUs. And in terms of process, staff is recommending that it become effective July 1st, and that entitlement applications that are submitted prior to that, those projects that are currently in the pipeline, will be grandfathered at current rates. We're recommending including an annual automatic construction inflation index to allow the rates to escalate annually with increases in construction costs. And then we're also recommending a complete review of the TIF rates and program after 3 years to be able to give a fulsome idea of how the program's working. Director Ameri, do you have anything that you'd like to add on the recommendation?
Not at this point.
And we've also prepared several comparisons so that you can see what these different rates look like for different jurisdictions for prototypical developments. So the next several slides will look just the same as this with different numbers, essentially. So this example is for a single family, a 3-bedroom single family attached dwelling unit. And you can see that Hayward's current rate is bolded and fourth from the bottom, and then the recommended rate is right above that, also bolded and wrapped in a green box. The light blue part of the bar all the way on the right are the traffic rates, the traffic component of the impact fees here. Green is parks and yellow is affordable housing. And there are a couple other types that some cities use as well that are less common. So this is the format that each of these you'll see. And city staff were very deliberate in the choice of comparison jurisdictions that we're presenting here in order to capture a broad cross-section of your neighbors' jurisdictions where you're competing for that development, as well as cities that have very recently updated their nexus studies. So you can see here for single family, the current is sort of near the middle bottom of rates when these selected comparisons, and the recommended puts you just a little bit higher, but still relatively in the same position regionally and still far below several other cities as well. This is a comparison for multifamily. As you recall, staff's recommending that this be waived currently, so the current and recommended rate are exactly the same. And in this situation, you're second from the bottom among these comparison jurisdictions for a single one-bedroom multifamily unit of about 700 square feet. The total fees would be about $16,000, and that does not include a TIF. General industrial, you can see that currently Hayward's at the bottom with just a small park impact fee, and the recommendation brings you to fourth from the bottom, still below Fremont and Alameda at about $1 million for a 250,000 square foot spec general industrial development. Distribution and e-commerce is similar. Currently, you have no traffic impact fee, just a park impact fee for industrial uses. With the recommended fee, you're still below Union City, Sunnyvale, and Fremont with a total fee of about 1.6, and traffic would be about 1.4 million of that total 1.6 for a distribution and e-commerce warehouse of 250,000 square feet. Retail, staff is recommending no traffic impact fee, so you have no impact fees that apply to zero. So you're at the bottom of these comparison jurisdictions. You can see that some jurisdictions charge quite a high fee for retail uses. And this is also similar for office, recommending no traffic impact fee here either, putting you at the bottom of these comparisons. And those are all the comparisons.
Thank you, Michaela. So at the first stakeholder meeting, we received feedback from a public member related to the fee for single-family home. And the question was, should the fee for single-family home be increased? And for reasons that Michaela covered, we believe that the fee is set at the right amount right now. Yes, the single family is experiencing a lot of demand, the costs are going up, but there is also the construction costs and land costs, and the fee that we have, when you look at it in comparison to other agencies, is, we believe, at an appropriate level. We also received a comment from a public member that was interested in use of the funds for some biking, walking, and transit-related improvements. So as reflected in our next study, majority of the fee is going to be used for improving intersections and roadways to make it safer, more accessible to pedestrians and bicyclists. And also there are some transit improvements that have been included. So that is already there to a great extent. Next. Again, as Michaela covered, there is going to be no impact to projects that are in the pipeline. And as a matter of fact, if any application has been submitted before the effective date of our new fee, they will be exempt from the TIF fee. We received also a question related to including some more transit-oriented projects in our TIF. This comment came from AC Transit. We coordinated with AC Transit on projected capital costs. We then worked with TJKM, who is our consultant that prepared the Nexus study and multimodal report to incorporate those transit projects in our TIF. So the TIF that is before you this evening includes those transit projects that AC Transit was advocating for. Next. So I'm not going to go over all of these because we have covered some of them, but at every stakeholder meeting that we had, there were some comments and concerns expressed, for instance, related to outreach to the stakeholders in person. We did that. Actually, we raised the number and contacted all of the developers that we could reach out by phone or leave messages for them. And the other comment was regarding grandfathering for projects that are in the pipeline. As I covered, that is going to be the case now. Next. There was a comment at the same developer feedback, the developer meeting, that some of the cities that we have selected are not really comparable to Hayward. One example was Cupertino. I explained that that is very true. Cupertino is not comparable to Hayward because they have fewer people living there and different type of development. But we selected Cupertino because they had done the latest version of TIF. The latest study was done by Cupertino. We wanted to see, if there's anything new in there that, we didn't want to overlook. The other cities are all in the East Bay and South Bay, and they are comparable to the city in terms of population and makeup. So that's why we selected them. Next. There were, again, some comments related to single family versus multifamily. And we explained that, yes, for single family, we have reduced the fee by 70%. For multifamily, you can look at it as we have reduced the fee by 100%. We are going to look at these fees again in 3 years and adjust them either down or up or leave them at the level that they are. But for this initial step, we have decided on 70% reduction for single family and 100% reduction for multifamily at this time. There were questions regarding the impact to local transportation analysis. And as I mentioned, it brings certainty and it also removes from LTA those projects that have already been included in TIF, 100 intersections, 15 roadways. And by doing so, it simplifies the process and less expensive, the process of preparing an LTA. Next. And also, I want to mention that we have prepared a fact sheet that is going to be available to the public and developers to answer frequently asked questions. There was a question asked regarding the relationship between TIF and vehicles miles traveled, VMT, which is now a component of preparing a CEQA analysis. And the response was that TIF does not have a relationship to CEQA. If CEQA requires using VMT for the analysis, TIF is not going to impact that one way or another. There was a question related to impact on businesses. As Michaela mentioned, our recommendation is not to have a fee at this time for retail and office. Restaurants included, general industrial and e-commerce also see a 30% reduction for their fees at this point. Next. Going back one slide. Yes.
This should be the right one, Alex. I think you just
Okay, all right. So let me just cover the Planning Commission. At the Planning Commission, we went to Planning Commission in mid-April. There was some discussion regarding whether the single family rate should be increased. There was some conversation about, single family homes are large, some of them are large. But then, the discussion was that, first of all, single family has different sizes. We have infill single family development with very small lots, small homes. So they are part of the single family. Also, as importantly, construction of townhomes are included in the definition of single family. So the fee that we have selected, I believe, or we are recommending to council, is at the appropriate level. And as Michaela shared with you, when you look at the fee that the city of Hayward is proposing to charge, it is in the ballpark right now with the fees that other cities are charging. So that was, a consideration too. And the fact that maximum allowable fee is only the maximum legal level, and not many cities, actually very few cities, set their fee at that level. I think I have covered everything else, but I just wanted to mention that we are going to take a look at our TIF in 3 years' time and adjust the fees based on the experience that we are going to gain in the next 3 years. Thank you. Next one. Yes, again, there were some questions related to the relationship between LTA and TIF and whether or not an LTA is still going to be required. Our response was that majority of projects are not going to require an LTA, but there are some projects because of their impact, for example, if they produce more than 100 trips during the peak hour, they're going to have to do an LTA. But even in that case, their LTA is not going to include those improvements that have already been included in our Nexus study. There was a question about distribution and the e-commerce, why we have given them a reduction of 30%, in addition to the fact that we didn't want to set the fee at the maximum allowable level. No one does, not many cities do that. But the other reason is that if you look at the amount of fees for warehouses and distribution e-commerce, you will see that that fee by itself is very much comparable to the fees that other cities in the Bay Area, comparable cities, are charging. So we didn't want to, again, put us at an economic disadvantage. Next one. Again, we covered Planning Commission recommended the exemption of ADUs, which we said that is going to happen. They asked questions about, what would happen to a development like Amazon in terms of fees if we had a TIF. We answered that question. Benefits to developers if they wanted to opt in to the TIF program because of all the benefits that it brings. And the last one was credit for eligible infrastructure improvement. If a development was required to do an improvement to an intersection because of the proximity to their development, and they didn't want to wait for the city to do that, when they made those improvements, can they get credit for the improvements that they have made in their TIF? And that is something that we are discussing. Next. There were questions regarding the LTA process, integration, and coordination with TIF. We have prepared a flowchart that we are not sharing with you tonight, that the developer can take a look at and see whether or not their project is subject to a TIF. If it is, whether or not their project is subject to VMT by looking at a VMT zone map. From there, take a look and see if an LTA is required based on the number of trips that they generate, or sometimes there are, component-specific memos that may be required, let's say for a drive-through or something like that. So those are covered in the flowchart that will be available and will be on our website for developers to consult. And of course, as I mentioned, we have developed a frequently asked questions that is going to be on the website and with links to other resources. Next step is that we are, with your comments tonight, we are planning to bring the TIF for council consideration of our recommendation 2 weeks from now on May 17. If you incline to approve it, then it will go into effect in between 30 and 60 days. So it takes it right after the beginning of July as far as the effective date. Next. We are just sharing this staff recommendation with you one more time. And we are now happy to answer any questions or receive your comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Since this is a work session, I'm going to open public comments first and then go to council for questions and comments. So I don't see any hands raised among Zoom attendees. I don't see anybody in the chambers who appears to be wanting to speak. Madam City Clerk is shaking her head that there are no public speakers. So, correct.
That's correct.
So I will, yes, and no Zoom attendees. So I will close public comments and go back to council, and I'll go to Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. Can we have that slide up of recommendations? Okay, and you guys have to forgive me because there was a lot to digest, and I was, trying to process certain things, and I'm thinking about other things. So the park fees, if I remember correctly, commercial developments / companies around the area, things like that, do not have to pay any park fees, correct?
You want to bring that table up that shows park fees and everything, all fees for commercial?
Yes,
yes.
So I believe that all non-residential development except industrial is exempt from park fees.
Yeah, and I remember this because I voted against this. This was something that was concerning as to, when we're talking about progressive options, people who take, lunch breaks and so forth, would love to sit at a park, and they should pay to sit at a park as well. So they should pay for that investment, if you will. I also am just very glad that you guys are doing the traffic impact fee. This was something that I raised on council, I want to say 2 years ago, and was a little surprised. I think Director Miri, you and I kind of had some behind the scenes conversations about this, right?
Yes.
It is incredibly important that we have this. One, it generates the much needed revenue that, helps us improve our infrastructure. We have potholes in a lot of our main streets, and a lot of people use our main streets to kind of bypass the traffic on the freeway, whether it's Hesperian, whether it's Mission, whether it's some of the side streets and so forth. So I'm very happy that you guys are doing this. I also do appreciate that you guys are trying to, I hope that we are trying to correct the impact fee, that that is my direction, right? It should not be zero, not in today's time, not in the Bay Area, and not as Hayward is growing significantly. So I do just want to correct that, that problem there. And then as far as the impact, I do want, I'm going to say multifamily complexes and, not necessarily retail or office, but I will say that the residential properties, as much as possible, I don't want to burden residents any further than they have been with fees and taxes and X, Y, and Z, right? I think that we have to kind of think outside of the box as to who makes the impact, whether they live here or not. They do something in the city of Hayward, right? And as we are expanding our industrial area, as we are expanding our economic development efforts and so much more, I think that, everyone should pay their fair share. That's kind of my 2 cents on that. So I'm happy that you guys have, and Director Mary, I will credit this to you because every time I've seen something from you, it takes into consideration just regular everyday people. So I do appreciate this effort. And then I wanted to ask what are the set rates that these are the set rates, correct? Of like,
Yes.
And it's when would it potentially start? Like, are we thinking January? Are we thinking July? How are we trying to set this up?
So we are going to bring this for formal action to council and present it on May 17. And if council inclined to approve these recommendations, they go into effect right after the beginning of July. So any project application submitted after the beginning of July will be subject to these fees.
Okay. And I think that's great because, as we've seen, we've had some big corporations wanting to come in here because Hayward is centrally located. They would, I feel like we should do an environmental impact fee as well beyond this, right? Rather than just our traffic and so forth. But constantly thinking out of the box, this is exactly the direction we need to go. If we can just, it would go to our general fund, correct? Or would it go through our infrastructure?
It is going to be used for improving our streets and intersections and making it more accessible to pedestrians, bicyclists, make them safer. It will go to transit improvements and so on.
Okay, perfect. So it is earmarked is my point. It's like it's going to be safeguarded to.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. I think that this is kind of the direction, I'd like to go. So I'm looking forward to the final decision, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. I do just want to highlight, you're looking to potentially reduce the single family. I just wanted to understand why single family was kind of carved out the way it is.
So single family is a residential development. And as Ms. Jellicoe mentioned, the financial feasibility analysis that was done termed that development marginal in that it can accept some impact fee, but not nearly at the maximum level. We looked at other jurisdictions, we looked at total amount of fees, and we came up with the 70% reduction for this implementation. I just want to be very clear that today we are recommending this for the next 3 years. In 3 years' time, we are going to take a look at the performance of our fees, the impact on the community and development community, and come back to you with the results of those analysis, and maybe recommend a different fee, maybe a little bit lower, maybe a little bit higher, maybe we'll leave them alone. So at this point, we are recommending a 70% reduction for single family development. And because multifamily is even more impacted than single family, no fee, meaning a reduction of 100% from the maximum allowable at this time for multifamily.
Okay, and so I'm reluctant to agree to the single family piece of it. And the reason why is I think that, again, I don't want to burden residents any further than they have been, especially with, inflation being the way it is, the economic downturn potentially looming, a wide variety of other issues. I just want to give our residents a break, right? I would be more open to retail and office being given a fee rather than single family and multifamily. What do you guys think?
I guess Councilmember Wahab, this is Jennifer Ott, Assistant City Manager. I just wanted to also mention another point that we are undergoing a feasibility analysis for the affordable housing ordinance and contemplating potentially increasing our fees on affordable housing, our requirements that would also increase the costs. And so I think that's why we're also wanting to be judicious and careful, because it's not a science, it's a little bit of an art of because what we don't want is we don't get any fees if we don't get any development, right? So I think we're just trying to be balanced. We can reevaluate in 3 years, we can see where we come out on the affordable housing ordinance, adopt something now, get it in place, and then continue to evaluate it. So that's what we're thinking. So I just wanted to remind the council that we are reviewing the affordable housing requirements as well.
So, and which I'm very supportive of, obviously, and even with affordable housing, I think that the affordable housing fee shouldn't just be for housing development and so forth, but also potentially a fee for some of the larger businesses out there, because again, that is what drives our housing prices and so much more in a negative way. So I just want to see. Okay, so I just want to see if we can potentially even reduce the single family fee a little bit more. I think it's a little bit still a problem for me, but to our assistant city manager's point, I fully understand it. I just kind of want to at least highlight that the single family, multifamily, the residential in particular is something that I'd be a little less inclined to support.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Wahab, could are you saying you want to, they're recommending a 70% reduction from the maximum. Are you saying you want to reduce that more?
Potentially. I just want to see if there is a potential option.
In other words, perhaps even exempt single family from a fee?
Yeah, and I know if he doesn't have an answer now, I'm completely fine with that, but I guess the next go around, since this is a work session, just thinking, is there an option to kind of waive it for single family? Is there an option to reduce it by 80% and add maybe obviously office or retail? But I want I want the residents in particular a little bit more protected and not stung by fees left and right. So
can I just, I just want to clarify, I want to make sure that homeowners directly are not ever paying these fees.
No.
So they're built into, they're obviously built into the home prices, which,
that's the thing. That's the thing. So for example, the multifamily, as I've said many, many times on this council, I pay my parking fee. I pay for my dog on a monthly basis. I pay for my parking on a monthly basis. These buildings were built 40, 50, 60 years ago, and I'm still paying for something because it's other fees that are being attached to it. So I just want to highlight that as much as possible, but trying to see if we can do something with retail and office and more of that general concept versus the dwelling units, if you will.
Yeah, and I think it's based on the financial feasibility of each of these different types of developments, and because single-family developments make the most money for the developers and have the most profit margin.
Bang for a buck, yeah.
That's why and even then, it's still a 70% reduction of the fee. So I think that we're still being incredibly reasonable, and when you look at our proposal versus what other cities are charging, it's very reasonable. So,
and just to add
I completely understand. I fully appreciate that. I still would like to just see if there is an option or some type of additional flexibility there, what we can do. I'll leave it at that, but that's where I'm at. And then obviously, as I stated, the park fees, I definitely want that back there.
Thank you.
Well, we're not really discussing the park fees. Those were just for example of what we are charging now. But
yes, which is nothing. So just highlighting my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go next to Councilmember Zermino.
Mayor, thank you. Alex, thank you and your staff for the good report, very comprehensive. 2 quick questions, if I may, please. On the slides comparing the prices, it listed Hayward Max and then Hayward Rec. I imagine the Hayward Rec is the recommended by staff, but what is the Hayward Max? That normally is above.
So when we prepared the Nexus study, multimodal report and the Nexus study, they looked at the cost of improving all of the projects that are included in the Nexus study. And then they took the potential for developments, all of the developments in Hayward, and based on that relationship, they came up with a cost that we cannot exceed. We can legally not exceed that amount. That for a single family home, for instance, as an example, is $11,584. That is the max. But the recommended can be set anywhere below the max, not exceeding it, but below the max. In order to come up with that, we consulted with community attributes to do a study for us to look at financial feasibility of these developments in Hayward, to look at what other jurisdictions are doing, because we don't want to be at an economic disadvantage compared to them. And with all of that information, they came up, working with the city staff, with a recommendation for the fee at this point. And that recommendation happens to be a 70% reduction from the max for single-family homes and a 30% reduction for general industrial and distribution warehouses. And at this point, there is a 100% reduction. There is no fee for retail and office, including restaurants, because they are so depressed right now in terms of new development, and we didn't want to create a burden at this time for them. We'll take a look in 3 years and see where we are at and re-examine these recommended fees.
Okay, so the max is what
theoretical maximum
there
fee
you go. Okay,
that
so
we can
theoretical, and the percentage decrease is from that max. Okay,
Correct.
so should we not worry about a 0% money to us on these fees, on these three particular items? That's not going to hurt us at all?
I would defer to Assistant City Manager Ott, but as far as I'm concerned, the development of retail, let's say, restaurants in the city is so important, and we don't have a whole lot of examples of that at this time, that we don't want to have a fee that in any way discourages that kind of development in Hayward. Not at this time, not at the tail end of COVID. We are not going to recommend that. 3 years from now, we'll take a look and see if the situation has changed. This is a dynamic, set of fees. We can come back. We can ask you to tell us how they need to be adjusted, and we'll adjust them at that time.
And the only thing I would add is just costs are a significant driving factor in what development gets built, and especially right now because costs are very high. So we have inflation all around, but construction costs in particular are really high. And we, even before the pandemic and some of that, we've seen very little new construction of retail or restaurants where you're building kind of from the ground up, or office. We have practically no office. And so our concern was, with costs being so high, if we increase the costs and make it even more costly, we're going to make it harder for those types of developments to occur here. And so I think our feeling is, we don't get any traffic impact fees if nothing gets built, and we want to be really careful with those uses that we already see kind of a market that Hayward's not really strong in, and uses that we know we really want to incentivize in the city, but to attract jobs, to attract restaurants. And so we wanted to take a little bit more conservative approach. And then Alex says, in 3 years, if that's changed, we can also change, and we can kind of increase those fees, and we can be dynamic too.
Yeah, so the idea of actually giving a couple of incentives in this particular, or at least monetary economic incentive, it's a good one.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the other side.
It's kind of like a reverse incentive.
Right, making sure that we were able to provide, one of the things that I'm sorry that we're not able to do with this is decrease the number of cars that are in the streets. That would really help out, but that I guess we can't do. But Alex and staff, there are many positives. There are all positives about this particular thing. Looking at all the people that were contacted on it, that's tremendous. We're going to be emphasizing life science, which is something that we really need to do. The objectives are excellent, and some of the other fees are fine too, so I don't mind that. Alex is a very comprehensive plan and presentation, so I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go back to Zoom now, and Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I first just want to start off with thanking Mr. Amari and his team. It's pretty amazing how quickly you pulled this together. I know it's been an ask for some time, and there's just a lot that's been occurring in the city. So I just want to thank you for getting this to us so quickly, and also taking the feedback from the Council Infrastructure Committee and doing those additional stakeholder engagements, especially with AC Transit. And then also just want to acknowledge the planning commissioners for their thoughtful input as well. With respect to the 3-year kind of reassessment analysis of how this is working, is that a common time period that other cities also have in place, or is this a nuance to Hayward?
Other cities look at their fees in 3 to 5 years because it is the initial implementation for us, and we have actually no idea how this is going to work out. We wanted to pick a shorter time frame, 3 years, to have an opportunity to take a look and have council direction regarding where we need to go.
Okay, and if this moves along the proposed timeline, the fees would go into effect July 1st?
Right after July 1st, yes.
Okay, the beginning of the fiscal year.
Correct.
And so some thoughts I had after the infrastructure meeting, obviously they weren't raised at that time, but I understand the methodology and I support it, but 2 areas I'm a little bit worried about. So as I understand it, the Sprouts In-N-Out Raising Cane site would not be subject to this because it's already received application. Should they choose to opt in, they could, but not legally required. Is that correct?
They are not legally required. Any application that has been submitted before the effective date of the new ordinance will not be subject to TIF.
Okay. So I guess my concern is if we get an application for a CVS, a Walgreens, like one of those major retailers that produces a lot of volume in terms of merchandise, pharmacy, whatever other features they have, I feel like that's a missed opportunity. And they definitely have the money to pay into this. It's the smaller retails. I understand staff's analysis as to why we don't want to impact smaller retails, but there's some major brands, major companies out there that can afford this. So that's my concern. Another concern is depending on what we do with cannabis sites, there's a very heavy trafficketed dispensary. It's not within the city of Hayward, but it's very close. And I see lots of traffic issues due to that site. So that's another concern I have. So I guess my question is, if we vote on this, I know we're not voting tonight, but if we vote as is, there is no way to retroactive, or there's no other mechanism to, we can't call out specific retail uses, or can we? I guess is my question.
Councilmember Marquez, when a major retailer with a lot of traffic, as you mentioned, comes to the city and they are not subject to TIF, it doesn't mean that they are not subject to anything. If they have a lot of traffic, we will do a traffic analysis, we'll take a look and see what impacts they create. They have to mitigate those impacts, but they don't have the option of going through the TIF process. So it is not that a major retailer with a lot of traffic impact can come in and not do any mitigation of their traffic impacts.
So the default would be just what our current practice is, correct?
Correct.
That doesn't apply. Okay. Thank you for that clarity.
And sorry, this is Senior Transportation Engineer. I just do want to add that every project that's being grandfathered in is subject to the current requirements. So they would have to do their own traffic analysis to define what the future cumulative impact would be. And they need to come up with mitigations for that impact. And they're solely responsible for that impact. There's no reduction like the TIF has, or no split costs. So developments now are paying their share. They just have a little bit more of a lengthier process.
Okay, so if they choose to opt in, it could potentially save them money and time, should they choose to, correct?
So we have to work with the city attorney's office and see how we can implement a process like that.
Okay, so that would be my preference, that be an option that's provided when this comes back to us for a vote. Thank you all for your great work.
What you meant was an option to opt in.
Correct, yes.
For any developments that are already in the pipeline and wouldn't be subject to this.
Correct, and if I could further elaborate, the projects that are currently being waived to not have the.
Okay, yeah, I got it. Okay, and staff understands that. Okay,
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And now we will go back to the dais here, and I'll go to Councilmember Lamnon, Mayor Pro Tem Lamnon.
That too. Thank you. So yeah, I will add my appreciation to city staff for the work, and I think that was articulated well by Councilmember Marquez, so I won't belabor that, but know that you're all appreciated. And the other thing that I did want to appreciate was the streamlining of this, that this was really responsive to a desire to make it a little easier, a little more clear, a little more reliable about what the fees were going to be, and I think that is profound. So if this passes and the funds are collected, is the expectation, and I apologize if this was in the report, but is the expectation that things would be sort of designated into zones, something like the way we do park fund allocations? I think. Yeah.
So if I may start.
Sure.
So there are projects right now that have been included in our Nexus study, and those projects are going to be prioritized and constructed over time. These fees are going to pay for construction of those improvements, improving, let's say, an intersection to make it more accessible to bike and ped, doing some roadways to make it easier for AC transit to and other transit related uses and so on. So projects that are in TIF right now, in our Nexus study right now, are going to be prioritized, and the funding is going to be used to implement them.
And just to follow up there, so there is not subdivided by zone. And if one of the reasons we're not recommending that is if you do that, then you collect money and it has to go into kind of a sub fund and can only be spent in those areas. So the improvement list that's in here is for kind of more citywide improvements, and that way you have a little more flexibility on how the money gets spent, as long as it's one of the improvements in the list. But if you do the sub-funds, then you have smaller pots of money and you just aren't able to leverage the funds in the same way and get projects done quite as quickly. So that's why we're not doing that.
And that's fine. I appreciate the explanation. What I was trying to sort of wrap my head around was there's a whole list of ones that are high priority. And so I think I understood Director Mary's comments of within that, there'll also be an additional layer of prioritization. And I think I heard you say leverage. So, for instance, if we're getting grant funds that would likely pick off one of those projects but needs matching dollars, that might
absolutely
prioritize that project.
So that way we can get projects done faster. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I get that. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And then I noticed in the list there was parking removal suggested as some of the projects, and I just wanted to, given the overwhelming responses that we hear about not enough parking, and I know the desire, I echoed the desire to get people out of their cars, and that some of the projects are removing parking. So can somebody give me a brief understanding of that?
So as I mentioned, part of the improvements are going to include provisions of making it easier for pedestrians, for bicyclists to be using the roadways. In some cases, there is going to be a need to remove parking that is excessive to the need right now. It is not, required for residents or businesses, and in consultation with them, we can remove some parking in order to be able to implement, let's say, a sidewalk project or a bike lane project to make it easier for access by those constituents.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And just to add, I mean,
yeah.
but we will do what we do with all these projects. We would go through a community outreach process and we'd work with the community on any project that would require parking removal. We would do that in concert with the community.
Certainly. Okay, thank you. And I appreciated that there was, Tennyson projects were not only in there, but many of them were on the high priority list. That felt very responsive to what we've heard in the community, and also the A Street two-way, return to two-way. I was happy to see in there. Was there evaluation, in a previous meeting, Councilmember Salinas mentioned this killer roundabout on Orchard and Joyce, and I didn't see it in the list, and I don't know if anybody's evaluating that. It may not be eligible for TIF, but I just thought it was a good moment to check in on that one. And if you don't have an answer,
Councilmember Lamnen,
okay.
that is a high priority project for us. We started working on that project. Unfortunately, because of departure of one of our staff, that project had to be put on pause for a little while. We are definitely planning to go back to that project and implement some improvements there.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. So I support the looking at whether or not it makes sense for developers who are going to pay to build the improvements, if it makes sense to get credit for that. I know that's still under evaluation, so I'll look forward to that analysis. And then just in future fee discussions, somewhat related to this item, but just sort of as we think about the burdens to our various types of developments and so on, one of the things we've heard from the development community is that tying the fee to the unit rather than the square foot can encourage larger units and therefore potentially more expensive. And so I knew you spoke to this a little bit earlier, but I'm just wondering if at some point we need to look at that again to see if we're disincentivizing kind of affordable by design units. And as with everything, there's a balance to be struck. I do get that. But, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Back to Zoom and Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff, for your report. I just wanted to comment on or ask a question on a couple of things. For the 3 to 5 years, is there any way we could get recommendations for maybe a sliding scale per square footage for how much we can charge per square footage that is reasonable? So it's kind of asking the question of how many square feet does it really impact where the tip actually impacts it negatively? Is there any way we can review that, because at times we'll probably change in that 3 year? So can we analyze that a little bit further? So smaller businesses may not want to open a business if they have a TIF that's applied or something like that. I don't know if that's something that can be analyzed at that level.
We can look into it. You're recommending that we do that when we bring that before you in 3 years.
Right. I think I do agree with some of the smaller retail not being charged right now, given what we're seeing right now. I do think we should consider the big box as what other council members have alluded to, because they actually made a lot of money during the pandemic. So I do think we could probably revisit that. But the smaller ones, I would like to see a little bit more maybe research or data or conversations with locals on what if they would open a business if they had to pay this fee, and would it be how would they be impacted, and what ways we can support them if that was to happen. I would be interested to see if that's possible for the smaller businesses. So I would say anything under 4,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet a bit higher than that, I think they probably could, but I just would be interested in hearing more information about how we can apply it to retail, whether it's gradually or is it going to be on a larger square footage scale?
We are going to collect that information, and we may not need to wait 3 years to share that information with you.
Okay.
Although we are not recommending to change the fees in less than 3 years, but we can share the information and get some direction from council as to where we need to go when we come back before you in 3 years to change the fees.
Okay, and I would say the same for possibly office as well. We don't have a lot of large office buildings here, so I'm concerned that it could impact that. I did want to say ditto on the environmental impact fee. I believe CEQA was where you will get the mitigating impacts, and it applies a lot of those impact measures as part of the project. And I know there's some developers who would prefer to just pay a fee versus doing the actual mitigating, because it actually would add more time on their project, or it's a really complicated situation. So I want to ask if there is a project where a developer wants to pay the impact fee, but it's going to be more complicated for your staff to manage the changes or the requirements of that impact fee. Would you have the option of kind of putting the project back on them if you don't want them to just pay an impact fee?
So, Councilmember Andrews, the idea behind the fee is to simplify the process and bring some certainty to the development process. But to your point, if there is a development that has an impact that is greater than the fee that they are obligated to pay because of their, specific unique location or the amount of traffic that they generate and so on, or proximity to, an intersection that is impacted, they will still have to be responsible for those impacts through their local transportation analysis. For larger developments with bigger impacts, they have to do that local transportation analysis and mitigate the impacts that they have there. It's just that the community-wide, the cumulative impacts are going to be covered under the TIF.
Okay.
If I could just add also that the way that the CEQA mitigation works is on a vehicle miles traveled. So it actually is now being kind of, what is the development's impact on the environment? And so it does act similar to what you're saying, an environmental impact. And let's say there is a project that increases vehicle miles traveled and has a major impact on kind of vehicle miles traveled, and then there would probably be a CEQA mitigation of some sort that would try to compensate or mitigate the environmental impact related to those vehicle miles traveled. So I just wanted to add that CEQA mitigation does get at some of those environmental issues that you guys have raised.
Okay. Yep. So I was just thinking more of like if it's really complicated, if it's near a railroad, because sometimes the CEQA mitigations, they have impacts that you can mitigate for your project that's closest to your project. But if it's impacting, a railroad crossing or, somewhere that's a little bit further down the road that's not necessarily adjacent to that project, it actually could be impacted. And so I know some developers probably won't necessarily want to take that on, and they would rather have the pay the fee because they believe the city will have a better shot of dealing with that entity than they will. So I was just wondering if in those kinds of situations, how would the city address that? But it sounds like they would have to still do it, but also pay the fee. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, that was really all my questions. A lot of the other points council members raised already. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll weigh in here a little bit. I want to say this is very, very complex. We've been talking about it for a while. I really appreciate the work that staff put into this, and a very thorough and clear report. And I'd note that right now we are the only major city in Alameda County without such a fee. And so it's time we got into that. I think the gradual approach is the right one to take. We are still, we don't really know what we're in right now. It looks like either a worldwide depression or, maybe a good economy. I don't know. It depends on which headline you read, which day. But we know we're in some troubled times right now, and coming out of a pandemic, hopefully coming out of it. And so I think I definitely agree with this sort of gradual approach and being, taking it slowly, the 70% reduction that's recommended, in the cases that it is, the single-family housing, the 100% reductions in areas that we right now are having trouble getting businesses that we want to come in, who will still have to pay for their specific traffic impacts, but won't be part of this program. So I think the staff did an excellent job of just keeping us right there in the mix. And this is going to really help us in some way, I would think, in terms of, there are a lot of transportation infrastructure grants out there right now, both from the federal government, the state government, through MTC and ACTC, and they often require some matching contributions, so this will help us, I would assume, have that money available for those contributions.
Correct.
And let's see. I was going to ask, and I wasn't going to name the name of the large internet retailer that the Planning Commission mentioned, and a specific project that actually has been withdrawn, but that we were having some significant discussions about. What was the answer to the Planning Commission about that? That would have.
It just happens that their contribution would have been comparable to what they would have to do in terms of doing the improvements themselves.
In what our staff was asking for them, the contribution under this, they would be in that category, distributor. I forgot what it was. The last
absolutely,
time, yeah.
E-commerce and distribution.
E-commerce, yeah. And so, okay, all right, that's interesting to know that we would have had that. Had we had that in place, that would have been the answer. So with that, I'll just say that I can support this coming back pretty much as is, with, to the extent you can, taking the comments that have been raised by council members, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and council members. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the huge contributions of our Assistant City Attorney, Mike Vigilia. He's been working really hard on this, and still, he's going to have to put it together for when we meet in 2 weeks. So thank you to Michael Vigilia.
All right, thanks to him and you and your staff for putting this together. And now we can move on to our next item, which is a public hearing. This is item number 11 on our agenda, a public hearing on to adopt a resolution to vacate a public utilities easement at 603 A Street. And Director Ameri, you're up again, I believe, or that's what I have on my list. And I do hope that your report is not going to be quite as long as the previous one.
It's going to be a very short presentation that is going to be given by Senior Civil Engineer Bigstrom.
Great, thank you.
Scott?
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. I will be presenting the public hearing and resolution to vacate public utilities easement at 603 A Street. I'm going to share my screen right now for what promises to be a very short presentation. And you should be able to see this here, so I'm going to start the slideshow. So here we are for public hearing and resolution to vacate public utilities easement at 603 A Street. 603A Street is located at the intersection of Grand and A Streets, just to the west of the BART tracks. The PUE, which is highlighted in yellow at the corner, was acquired in 1993 by the city for a streetlight project, about a 12-foot by 12-foot area. The city utilities were subsequently relocated with a separate streetlight improvement project, or actually intersection improvement project. And the property owner has since requested that this PUE be vacated so that they could fully develop the site with a planned future development. This vacation is being conducted following the procedure outlined by the California Streets and Highways Codes, including public noticing and postings, and including the public hearing we are holding tonight. Quick street view, this is the corner. If you remember this property from years past, there was a long kind of abandoned construction project that has recently been demolished. The PUE is located at the corner approximately between the fire hydrant and the streetlight pole, just on the project site there. And I will say this concludes my very brief presentation. I'm available for any question, and the owner of the project, Ryan Quiervin, is also in the Zoom audience tonight. Should you have any questions for him?
Well, thank you for your very brief presentation. I'm going to ask if there are any council questions right now, just questions. And I don't see any hands raised among council members, so I'm going to open the public hearing and ask if there are any attendees on Zoom, or there really aren't any in the council chamber. So is there anyone raising their hand? We'll give you a minute or a few seconds here. We don't have too many attendees left, and I'm not seeing any hands go up, so I'm going to close public comment and go back to council for and I will go to Councilmember Zermeño, who has his hand up.
Thank you for the report, Alex and staff. I am very happy that finally something is being done in this corner. It was quite an eyesore in that corner for many, many years. And with that, I will move the item.
Second, Marquez.
Have a second from Councilmember Marquez. Are there any comments? Not seeing any. Madam City Clerk, on the motion to approve the staff recommendation by Councilmember Zermeño, seconded by Councilmember Marquez, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Zermeño.
See.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and the motion passes with 7 aye votes, and I think that might be a record for handling an item, but thank you very much. With that, we will move on to, yes, thank you for staff, for Mr. Wilkinson. We will move to item number 12, which is an update on our strategic roadmap and adoption of a resolution approving the updated strategic roadmap for the FY 2023 budget. This was continued from our meeting last week on April 26th, and we are going to go to City Manager McAdoo on this one.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And I'm going to turn it over quickly to our management analyst in the City Manager's office, Mary Thomas, who's actually going to be doing, I think, the PowerPoints for both of the next 2 items. I just want to thank her for her just amazing coordination work on the strategic roadmap. She and our Assistant City Manager, Jennifer Ott, have been working closely both with the executive team and a variety of city staff throughout the organization to update the strategic roadmap, organize the council retreat this a couple months ago that we had, and then to prepare this action item so we can incorporate the roadmap into this year's annual budget document. So with that and a lot of gratitude for their amazing staff work, as always, I will turn it over to Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, and I will share my screen. 1 second here. And can you all, let's see, can you all see that in full screen? Great.
Yes.
Yes.
So as Kelly just mentioned, we had the retreat back on January 29th. And so this slide is just a brief summary of that retreat. Overall, council more or less agreed with the work plan for fiscal year 23 and was fairly positive about the city's progress. There was also that pre-survey that all of you filled out. Thank you for doing that, which indicated the same. And council agreed with staff's approach to include a racial equity framework in the plan. There were a few projects that council added and several additional topics brought up, so I will mention those tonight. And there was a full summary included as the attachment to this report, and I want you to know that we've given that to all the project managers and they're aware of all the comments that council made. Also, thank you. Someone pointed out that Russell City was not spelled correctly in that, so we will update that. And at the retreat, staff presented several proposed amendments to the priority titles, and council was mostly agreeable to those or felt positively about them. The one where there was some disagreement was the one that was formally combat climate change. There were two suggestions, so we read through the comments again and just combined them. So it's quite a long title now. So seeking your feedback on that tonight, and also a reminder that we are planning a much more extensive update next year because there just maybe some changes in priorities, maybe some new council members, and this is the end of the 3-year plan, and so we will have an opportunity to revisit names at that time as well. This slide shows the updated format. So we wanted to show the progress we've made so far, as well as the year 3 projects in a quick glance. So hopefully this format kind of works. Let us know if you have any feedback. And these are the top, I'm gonna, for the sake of time, not read through these, but they were in the staff report. Council, there was a prioritization exercise, and council, these were projects that got 4 or more votes from the council to have them in their top third. That does not mean we're not working on the other projects. Staff were intending to work on all the projects in the year 3 roadmap. Just as you heard earlier tonight, if there are vacancies or other things that come up, it's helpful for us to know where to prioritize our resources. We did hear you guys say that there were some challenges or some confusion with the voting. So we took that feedback. We have that duly noted for next year if we do a prioritization exercise again. So I'm gonna actually just quickly go through these. We can come back to them if you guys have any questions in your comments. And then, oh, there are 6 of them. So this slide refers to some additional comments that came up or items that are kind of reoccurring when we bring the strategic roadmap forward. So we want to make sure that we're hearing you and we know that there's council interest. So here's what staff's recommendation are for each of these items in the coming year. For the public art, there was I should have updated this. This went last, there was an informational report that went last week. For the fiber internet access conversation, there's a decent amount of conversation. There will be a report outlining kind of the current internet needs for Hayward, especially Hayward businesses, and approaches that other jurisdictions have taken. And then in sort of in the more recent years, because this conversation's been on there for several years. And that would be brought to the infrastructure committee in the next year. Smoke-free ordinance for apartments, staff will provide a memo to council outlining the feasibility of implementing something like this and potential costs. For public lighting, staff will do an update also at the infrastructure committee, and same with the soft sorting ordinance also at the infrastructure committee. So the next steps for this item, if council does adopt it tonight, we will include it in the fiscal year 20. Well, the budget book printed with the draft because this didn't go last week, but we would include it with the adopted budget, the final. And you'll hear staff refer back to the strategic roadmap quite a bit at the budget retreat. It's been a very useful document for staff to sort of know how to frame their budget requests. And then, as I mentioned, we'll be doing a much more comprehensive update next year. It will take place over several meetings. The city manager's office is intending to do some team building and a review of the vision statement, and as well as align anything we're doing with the new council member orientation to kind of encompass the team building. So that's it. As a reminder, we will do council questions, any public comments, and then council comments and action.
All right, thank you. With that, I will again open public comment. We are down, we do actually have some, so I'm going to, wait a minute, I'm sorry. First, I'm going to ask for council questions, right? Because we are voting on this. So, council questions. Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. I think Councilmember Marquez may have been ahead of me. No?
Yes, I
Okay,
see
you
that.
go.
I do. You're right. You want to go ahead, Councilmember Marquez?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Wahab. Thank you, staff. This is incredible work. I really appreciated the format for the retreat. When we get this in our budget document, I know it's going to be draft version. It'll probably be a supplement to what we've already received. Are we going to have timelines like we did in the past, like what year these projects are going to be worked on? Is it going to be the same format, or I think you mentioned there is a change?
Yeah, so basically what you'll end up seeing, and I'll share it 1 second, I will share my screen again. What you'll end up seeing is, is it gonna go backwards for me? It's not. You'll end up seeing a similar table to what you've seen in the past, but it will have grayed out the first 2 years because we at this point have reached. There you go. Can you see? So that's the format. So at this year, we've reached year 1 and 2. So all we have left is years 3, and then there is that column for year 3+ to consider. So you'll kind of see what we're intending to do in year 3, and then anything that kind of wasn't able to be accomplished in the whole plan kind of is listed in year 3+ that can be reviewed next year.
Okay, and then in terms of implementing the feedback we received from the resident satisfaction survey that I believe we do every 2 years. I know the council tried really hard to keep that information front and center when we were choosing the initiatives, the priorities we want to focus on. But do you feel that staff is also keeping that in mind when developing this plan, or they just want to make sure that they're parallel and we're keeping that information kind of front and center?
I can briefly state that it was presented to the management, all the AD managers at the management update meeting, the own overview of the resident satisfaction survey. But I don't know if anyone, Kelly or anyone else, wants to jump in on that.
Yeah, and I think we try to keep it front and center and really kind of focus, what our priorities are when we see the results of the resident satisfaction survey. I think there's always an opportunity to continue and to enhance that communication amongst employees. But as Mary did mention, we did present that at our quarterly management update meeting. We also had a separate presentation and discussion about it with the executive team department head meeting. So we've seen it in multiple venues with employees. And so I think it'll also be helpful to, when we come back in the fall with potentially the new council members, the new mayor, sort of grounding the discussion again in that resident satisfaction survey will be useful. I think you're muted, Councilmember Marquez.
Councilmember
Marquez. I was sparing you guys dog parenting noises, so sorry about that. So thank you for acknowledging that we are going to be faced with some new leadership, right, in the fall. So we will be revisiting this, obviously, with new council members serving. But also in the past, I know the city manager has also made it a point, because we all can be very eager and excited. And obviously we would love to do everything that community members bring forward to us, but just capacity wise, it's not realistic. We even heard from employees today, we're shortly understaffed. There's just a lot of competing challenges. So can the city manager just speak to, should a lot of new ideas come forward in the next 9 to 12 months, how do you see us deciding what we're actually going to do? So I guess what I'm getting at, city manager, is in the past, you'd kind of called on, okay, if you want to do this, what's going to be put further back on the list? Can you just kind of speak to that issue?
I think I think it's going to be a much more comprehensive update this time around when we go through the strategic roadmap, and I think we'll have to have that conversation. I think because of, as you mentioned, the change on the council and the change, in the mayor's role, I think there may be some, new projects that come up or new ideas, and I see it, and we haven't kind of fully mapped out the process yet, but as a multi-phased process where, the council would have an opportunity to really brainstorm, I know there's going to be a lot of ideas that are out on the campaign trail. People will want to bring those forward. So giving folks a venue to talk about those, share those, and then I think, that gives staff an opportunity then to respond. We'll probably come back and have an analysis of, are we already working on some of those initiatives? What are the impacts? Here's the trade-offs that the council would have to face in terms of staffing, or here's what we think we might need to add in terms of staffing. So I think it'll be probably a much longer process to update next, over the next 6 to 12 months. Probably we'll start it. My guess is we'll probably start in January. And it might take a little bit longer than we have usually anticipated, but hopefully we'll maybe have it as a supplement to the budget document for next year.
Okay, thank you. That's the term I was looking for, is what are the trade-offs? I appreciate that. And then with that analysis in the future, can the city manager please also include the staffing issues in that department that would be impacted? Since we know there are so many vacancies, I think it'd be helpful just to know exactly what we're facing. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, now Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. Would you be able to, sorry, Ms. Thomas, go back to the slide? Okay, I may have misheard this. The slide that says that, these were the other top voted items, but not necessarily on our priority list.
Oh, the ones that, no, those were the top those were the ones that I showed were the top, and for some reason I'm unable to move my screen. So I'm going to, I want to try that again. Do you remember which priority it was for that you were interested in?
I'm sure it was me misunderstanding, but the slide that says mental health and clinician. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, is this the one? Okay.
Yeah. You stated, sorry, and this is the part where I'm a little confused. You stated that this is a priority or this is not?
These are the projects that received 4 or more council. When council was asked to choose their top third of the year 3 work list, these were the top third that 4 people voted or more. So. Okay. Now, so I just want to highlight, just a couple of points here. Did we specifically call out dispatch or just overall cross city additional bodies needed? So, for that number one, so there is a specific project related to dispatch, which we are definitely still working on. It didn't appear in the top third that council chose, but we're intending to work on all the 78 projects that are in year 3, and that the dispatch assessment does appear in there. Okay. And then just the vacancy issue that was discussed earlier today. I do feel like that's, for me, I know that's kind of like across the board. I'd still like to address that, right? So I just wanted to, is that highlighted here? Because I know, our city manager mentioned we're going to hire more HR staff, and hopefully,
I think it's probably in strength and organizational health, and that I know there's a number. One of the priorities under there is to finish the HR department strategic plan. It wasn't a top voted project from the city council, but for internal operations, it's a top priority for our staff because we really need to get our HR structure really firmed up, get the staffing levels stabilized, because that's really going to help us support the rest of the organization. And also, as part of that plan, I think we'll talk a little bit about that during the budget hearing, we've created, so pretty much every HR staff member has had anywhere from 15 to 90% of their time devoted to different COVID-related reporting, OSHA requirements, testing, vaccination. We're going to be creating kind of a separate temporary organizational structure and hire hire 3 temporary positions. So basically takes that work off of the HR workload so they can refocus on recruitment, retention, training, benefits, the things that they're supposed to be focusing on in the organization as we kind of transition from pandemic to endemic mode. And so we'll have kind of a separate little sort of mini organization that'll just deal with the COVID testing and tracking.
Awesome. I do appreciate that. And then one of the other things I wanted to ask in this effort for HR, I know, to our city manager, I've kind of.
You muted, Councilmember Wahab.
Sorry, I accidentally clicked that. So I may have talked to you, to our city manager a long while ago, but I was going through the job codes like each year that we kind of address some of this stuff. I just wanted to make sure, are we potentially even, and this may be, me getting ahead of myself, but are we looking to kind of just make the uniformity of the job code where it's an associate journey and then a senior, and really making a track record for their growth within the city in their position, and kind of reassessing some of this? Because some of these labels and titles are a little outdated. So I just wanted to see if that's kind of on that. Definitely not going to be in the year, but maybe 2 years, 3 years down the line.
Yeah, that's definitely been a goal, and we've been able to do that with a number of classifications. Again, those are some of the forward-looking projects we just really haven't been able to get to in the organization because of HR staffing, because of the COVID response and what we've had to do. It's basically, we're going to put out the things that are on fire in front of us, like getting the recruitments, the high-priority recruitments done, answering people's benefit questions, getting people's retirement paperwork processed, kind of like just the core functions. So, we've really struggled. And also we had contract negotiations for a number of our bargaining units over the last year as well. So that absorbed a significant amount of time. So we really haven't had an opportunity to do more of that strategic thinking around how do we create career pathways in the organization? How do we create talent development plans? How do we ensure that we're creating training programs so people have promotional opportunities? So those are exactly the things that I really want the new, as we restructure HR, really thinking about that and having the organization focus on it.
Okay. And then Ms. Thomas, do you mind going through your slides? I think there was something at the very beginning I wanted to highlight.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I will do this again, and hopefully it will cooperate better with me this time. Let's go to the top. And there you go. Do you want to tell me which one?
I wish I could control it a little bit. Let's see.
Is it the project lists?
Overall, yeah, I think this is, so I really just want to understand, when we're talking about vacant building properties, right? Is
that?
I think it was on the last one that you just showed.
Okay. Yes, engage owners of vacant building properties.
One, what is the mechanism to track that right now?
I can jump in here. This is Jennifer Ott, Assistant City Manager. So we do, our code enforcement division has been implementing the vacant building ordinance, and we have kind of a database that we're putting together. There's a tool we actually presented to the Council Economic Development Committee that shows how it's a GIS tool and actually tracks vacant properties. And then different kind of shades of vacant properties. So there's different classifications of them, so we can actually do that. And so it's the first GIS tool for vacant properties that we've seen in the county. So we're hoping that could be an internal tool as well as one that could be available publicly. So we're tracking it through our database. And then we also, just our economic development team, takes a more proactive approach too, where we're actually proactively targeting vacant properties that have significant, either problems associated with them or blight, and then they really try to target kind of more from the carrot standpoint of really working with them to try to find development partners and work with the property owners once they actually get an application in to get it moving and done. So we try to take an approach on both sides. Does that answer your question, Councilmember Hobb?
Yeah, 100%. And I just want to make sure it's for both commercial and residential if possible. Granted, residential gets bought up quicker. And then the final question, and I apologize. The racial equity lens, you know, we have been very much focused on GARE, kind of looking at things, making sure, you know, we account for things. But, you know, I think that it has been mentioned, you know, over the years of having our staff reports have a racial equity, but I would also include economic piece, not just the financial implications, but the economic analysis, if you will, in our staff reports is I'm hoping that that's also part of our fiscal year 23 efforts.
I think we've talked about including that in our staff reports. It's on the work plan. I know the GARE cohort has been talking about it. It's going to require some more organizational training first, and so I think they're focused on what does that training program look like, and I don't know. I know our other assistant city manager, Regina Youngblood, is on. I don't know if she wants to take an opportunity to respond on that comment. And I apologize, Regina. I didn't. If you want to make a comment there.
Not a problem. I don't know if you can hear me, but I think what you said is absolutely correct, Kelly. The organization needs a little bit more training to normalize the language and understanding of racial equity before we begin to incorporate that into our staff documents, et cetera.
Okay, and I'm hoping that even if it's not 100% perfect, and granted, you know, language and things like that, you know, some people are more sticklers than others, but I think that, you know, what I'm looking for is if we can call that out as something that we can, you know, the entire council obviously genuinely supports, you know, the racial equity lens to kind of what we're doing. I hope that we are including the economic equity lens too, just to kind of say, okay, let's say if a development goes forward in staff report, last year and the year before, you know, that, and Mayor, just let me finish 1 second. The zip code, you know, had this much income, right? And now it's this piece. So it's, you know, I don't want to say, let's make it a little bit more basic, but we will have to start from somewhere, and I'm hoping we start sooner than later. And if we can call that out a little bit in the final, you know, everything we are trying to do for fiscal year 23. So I just wanted to state that. And
okay, I just wanted to remind you that this is the question part. We still have a public hearing, and then you can come back with your comments, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Zermino, did you have questions?
Two quick ones.
Okay.
And one is a follow-up on colleague Marquez's question. We will have some new folks on the team. Will that also mean that we will be modifying this document, specifically item page 3 of the report where it lists the strategic priorities? Is that something that can and will it
potentially happen? I mean, I think if, you know, depending on how the council changes, you know, there could be a vote to change the priorities. These priorities have been very similar in the 12 years I've been here, in spite of changes in council, so I can't imagine they will vary wildly from where we are today, but there may be some tweaks, some changes that come together. You know, I think everyone has maybe a different perspective on how to get to the end goal, but I think the overarching priorities have been pretty consistent, you know, in terms of the community needs. So I think we'll have an opportunity to look through that with the new council, and we'll start there. You know, obviously just starting with the priorities, making sure everyone's on the same page with those, and then talking about what are the projects that fall underneath those.
And that actually means that I cannot share this particular page at the moment. I should not share it because it may change.
Well, no, if the council adopts it tonight, it will be the official strategic roadmap for probably at least the next year.
All right.
Yes. So it will be the priorities for the next, at least the next year.
Nice and direct questions without prefaces, Mayor. And you can come back and I'll have a motion for you.
Okay, but we have a public hearing first, so, and I don't think we have any more. Yes, we do. Councilmember Salinas.
Thank you. Just 3 questions. One is, how far are we on the street vendor ordinance? Have we started that process? Where are we at on that?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. We can bring that back as part of maybe the budget presentation. I know it's on our, I think it's starting this next year. We have it on our roadmap for next year, but I don't know. I don't think we have started it yet. We have the density bonus ordinance that we're updating right now, the residential standards. We've got the affordable housing ordinance. So we've got, I think, the rest of this year kind of mapped out, but we'll check and see what the status is and get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I know we did an initial presentation to the Economic Development Committee. I think it was probably about a year ago. Yeah, a while ago. And so I think some other priorities came up to supersede that. So.
Okay. And then, my proceeding question, of course, is the, we've been getting a lot of emails around the smoke-free in multi-unit housing units. I know there are some, modeled ordinances out there. If in the event, let's say there is a strong urge to bring that and to work on that, how do you see that sort of manifesting given the workload we have right now?
And I think Mary had mentioned that on one of her slides. Maybe if you could, I think the goal was we were going to evaluate the staff time needed to work on that and bring back a recommendation to council on how we might move forward. Mary, did I miss any points?
Yeah,
on
that's
that?
correct. That was the intention, is to bring back basically a short report explaining costs and staff capacity.
So that is sort of in process right now.
Yes, that is part of the work plan for year 3.
Okay. And I think that is it. That is it for me. Okay, thank you.
That was 2, not 3, but we'll let you go. Yeah. Okay. With that now, I'm going to open public comments. And actually, I think we've lost a couple of them. But I will call on Daisy Romo Rodriguez, who's on Zoom.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daisy, and I'm the adult coordinator with BASTA. I'm here to talk about secondhand smoke in multi-unit housing, since I noticed it was an added topic, and I would just like to share the importance of the issue. And I would like to thank the council for taking this issue into consideration. So BASTA really values the input of the community, and we know the best way to know how the community is feeling is to go and talk to residents. So we've gone and we talked to over 200 multi-unit residents in regards to secondhand smoke exposure in their units. And through these conversations, I heard that many residents are concerned and affected by secondhand smoke. One resident told me she lives in the same unit for over 15 years and has a 10-year-old with asthma, which she believes she got from the secondhand smoke entering her unit every single day for the past 15 years. Another resident is recovering from bronchitis and is very sensitive to secondhand smoke. She also noticed that her young daughter begins coughing whenever she smells marijuana. So the smoke is not only affecting her, but also her young kids, which she's really concerned about. Another resident successfully quit smoking a little bit over a year ago, but when she moved back into multi-unit housing, she noticed that she was affected by secondhand smoke again. She was able to smell the smoke, and she quit smoking for the health of her children, but now this is another worry that she has to deal with again. Not only that, but the smoke also triggers her. She is more tempted to pick up a cigarette whenever she smells the smoke, and she's just having a really hard time dealing with that. So it just goes to show you that secondhand smoke is affecting a lot of people in multi-unit housing, and creating a smoke-free environment will allow people who quit to be much more successful because they won't have that temptation from their neighbors. People are being affected in many different ways, and not everyone could afford to move to a single-family home, but they shouldn't have to risk their life for it. You know, landlords are required by law to create a healthy living environment for their tenants. If there's black mold, pests, leaks, or any other issues, they have to be addressed immediately to create a healthy living environment. But that's not being done with secondhand smoke. You know, secondhand smoke kills 40,000 Americans yearly. That's a little over 100 Americans a day. So why is this deadly issue not being addressed? People deserve to live with dignity, regardless if they live in a single family home or a multi-unit housing dwelling. So the city council has the power to create a healthy living environment for Hayward residents. So can Hayward residents count on you, their council, to direct staff to prioritize the health of Hayward residents by finding a solution to secondhand smoke in their units? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And it looks like we have another caller as well, another attendee who wants to make a comment. We got them on the line?
Hi there. Hi, Mayor Barbara Holliday and City Council. Woo, you guys are strong. It is late. My name is Jade, and I'm the project director of BASTA, Bay Area Strength Through Activism. And it is a pleasure to be speaking to you with all of you today and in some conversations that our team has had. I was really happy to know that in agenda item 12 that an additional topic stated that a smoke-free multi-unit housing ordinance will be explored. And it states that the council has requested staff to explore smoke-free multi-unit housing protections and see what other jurisdictions have done on this topic. I have a lot to say, but first I really want to thank the council for considering these types of protections. Since November 2021, resident leaders in Hayward and BASTA have been speaking to multi-unit housing residents to learn more about their secondhand smoke experiences in their homes. And after talking to over 200 tenants, we learned that there is very strong support for smoke-free multi-unit housing protections, and found out that more than half of residents are exposed to secondhand smoke in their units, with marijuana smoke being more common than tobacco smoke. Additionally, in learning more about their experience, we've been raising awareness about the dangers of secondhand and thirdhand smoke by door knocking, participating in community events. And with our efforts, we've collected over 250 petition signatures, collected 3 letters of support from property managers, and currently have a letter of support from the Alameda County Labor Council with a commitment from the Hayward Youth Commission. I'd like to highlight that Hayward has been very innovative and progressive with becoming a smoke-free city, and with a comprehensive tobacco retailer license and a smoke-free outdoor air ordinance. And because of that, currently has a tobacco control grade of B. But what's bringing Hayward down from getting an A is an F in smoke-free multi-unit housing. And in terms of what other jurisdictions have smoke-free multi-unit housing, unincorporated Alameda County just passed something. The city of Berkeley, Union City, and other jurisdictions do have this. And with that being said, BASTA has worked very closely with the Alameda County Public Health around this issue and just spoke with them today and was told that they'd be more than happy to support the city of Hayward in their enforcement by serving as recipients of complaints and trying to resolve any issues 3 times before sending it to your city's enforcement agency. And this is Paul that I talked to from Alameda County Public Health. And before I end my public comment, I'd like to share a personal story that we've collected. This story says, I hate the fact that in summertime when the weather is warm or a nice cool evening, after a hot day, I can't keep my windows open because the neighbor is on the patio smoking their pot. I don't want that smell in my house, nor do I want tobacco smell in my house. So I get upset that I can't enjoy the cool evening because of the secondhand smoke. Again, I really appreciate that this council is already going to be looking into it. But we would like to know on behalf of the residents, can we continue to count on this council to direct staff to prioritize the health of Hayward residents by finding a solution sooner than later? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And with that, I don't believe we have any other public comments. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comments and go back to council for direction and hopefully a motion. Yes, Councilmember Salinas.
Thank you. I wanted to make a comment about, the city manager had just made a comment about, she's been here 12 years and there's been, some tweaks and slight changes and, and so forth, and to our priorities and strategic initiatives. And, I have to, partly that is because these emanate from the neighborhood survey, right? And, one of the beauties of our priorities and our strategic initiatives is that they have endured over time. In this case, over the past 12 years, but this has been a process since I became a councilman here on the council. That this has been a very thorough process. It's been a process that we have gone into the community. Staff, I have to give incredible credit to staff. I have gone to some of these park charrettes where there have been one person, maybe three people, that's excluding me, showing up on a Saturday morning, you know, and they set up their tents and they bring, you know, coffee and cookies and so forth. So, you know, this has been a process, and the people who do show up, you know, they go through the process of putting their stickies on the priorities, and you know, and staff is constantly engaged with them. And then we do get events where there are a lot of people, and where, you know, that process equally collects, you know, the data and we process that here. So, you know, over the years, I have been very proud of our strategic initiatives and our priorities because they are from the community. I mean, and I think, so when we talk about the work we do up here, you know, we do have our metrics. And I think, you know, over the years, we have gotten better. We've now applied some great metrics. And, you know, I think this year, there's been some slight sort of, you know, tweaks to the graphics that we're now using, which is we can see what's been accomplished and what's, you know, where we're going and so forth. So it's a lot more user friendly. So I just wanted to compliment the city manager and staff really on this work. I like the you know, the equity questions, of course. One great improvement I've seen is a lot of the presentations, a lot of the staff reports that we get, they start with a racial and ethnic breakdown of all the different communities that are being addressed and impacted. There is a thoughtful consideration about those who are furthest away from you know, whatever the work that it is that we're doing. There is some thoughtful consideration as to those that are furthest away from the program or service that we're deploying. And we do resolve those, and we make a great effort to resolve those. And so I appreciate that. You know, the future councils, that has been raised on a couple of occasions tonight. And, you know, you know, we have, I think, over the years, made some slight tweaks. We do revisit these during the years. But I also want to, you know, emphasize that this is a neighborhood document. This is a document that emanates from the community. And you know, we do make changes and tweaks, but we are very mindful that, or I should say, you know, speaking for myself, and I know my colleagues do this too, but while we may tweak and adjust along the way, nobody anticipated COVID-19, right? So we made a lot of tweaks and adjustments. But we are very mindful. We are very mindful that these emanate from a lot of community engagement and neighborhood work. I'm pleased to see that the top voted projects are in there. And I'm also very, you know, I caught the nuance tonight that they're on there, and they will be moving and adjusting as time goes by. And you know, something may happen down the road, and opportunities come up, right? And we make adjustments. And so I'm very hopeful, and I'm very excited to see those on that graphic. I wanted to also tell the city manager and her team that I heard your HR plan, and I think that is important. And so I wish you well on that. It seems complicated, but I do see the need for that. I mean, we heard staff tonight, and so I wanted to reinforce that. And so lastly, I just wanted to, thank staff. I know, community engagement work it takes a lot of work, and it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of weekend work. And sometimes the audiences and the engagement is large, and sometimes it's small. But nonetheless, they get up, they go out there, and they do it, and they collect data. And that's what these initiatives and priorities are about. So those are my comments. I'm not going to move it because I did hear my colleague, Council Member Sedmenyo, say that he would like to do it. So those are my comments, and so I will defer to him. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I will go next to Councilmember Zermeño.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll second the colleagues Salinas' motion.
But he did not make it, so you need to make it.
All right.
Did you want to make a motion? The motion?
No,
he did not make it.
No, that's fine. Then I'll go with the second. So go ahead, please.
So I'll move.
Okay,
And second, and just a couple of comments, really, because the city staff's work on this has been tremendous, just really fantastic. And as our city manager pointed out, we've been doing this for quite a few number of years, and we've been moving it, modifying it, bettering it every time. I will be sharing the strategic priorities. Now, they used to be called something else, but now they're priorities, and that's fine. I'm very pleased with the green and the red, the green being the climate action. I think that's something very, very important. And growing the economy. If we don't grow our economy, then everything else, I think, fails, including the green, which is we're supposed to be planting trees. And then, the small businesses, they need to grow with the economy. So I'm very pleased with this. I thank you all. And let's keep working on this. The message that we received today from our three employees, city staff, is that we need to make sure that we have the correct number of staff personnel to work on these priorities, and that's tremendous. I think Monica is the one who made the presentation. Monica?
Mary.
Yeah, Monica, thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, great. So we will now go back to Zoom and Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff. And I just want to thank management analyst, Mary Thomas. Yes,
That's
okay.
correct.
Just making sure I had your title right. I know that's a lot of work to corral that information and to have it in an organized way, but aesthetically pleasing as well. I just want to give you kudos on that. That is very important. Visuals are really important. I'm, again, learning how to do some graphics myself, and I've always appreciate your presentations, especially. I just wanted to thank staff for really highlighting in this strategic roadmap, even though you've had this vision for over a decade, seeing mental health on there, adding public art, doing things, well, you always have public art, but really making that a focus as an additional topic is really, really important. And I really appreciate those add-ons and just prioritizing that, and also prioritizing what we'll do in terms of getting more information and looking at what the community really wants to see as part of responding to what happened in Russell City. So those are really important topics that you all included as part of this roadmap. So I really appreciate that. Also am happy to see so many grants and loans being dispersed throughout the community. We had a really good presentation from the Economic Development Department, and I know multiple people who have received those grants and have been really excited to open a business or to help them get back on their feet after COVID. So what you all are doing already is making an impact. So I'm really excited to see what happens in fiscal year 23. One thing I wanted to highlight is that I have talked to a couple of labor groups about the strengthening of organizational health. And I know there's a lot of focus on just acquiring new talent, making things more efficient, being more accessible, but I also want to include self-care. I know that's a really hot topic right now, but I really want want to make sure that as part of that talent acquisition and making sure when we're thinking about talent, how are we retaining the talent, and how are we making sure they're getting the care that they need in order to do their jobs effectively, whether they are in animal services because they're dealing with really, traumatic situations, if they're in public safety, or just stress on the job because they are interacting on customer service, or if you're an executive. So I just want to make sure that that is a focus, even though it's not specifically highlighted here, but I think it could be incorporated part of that talent acquisition. So just wanted to say that I do feel like when there is, since I'm the newbie on the block, I felt like I was really frustrated in hearing what I got elected for, I couldn't necessarily do right away. And so I was happy to hear the staff really helped me connect my priorities for what you get elected for, and what you hear the community want when you are running. You try to push those initiatives, even though you're just elected. It's not that you're trying to usurp 12 years of surveys or try to usurp 12 years of work that has been done on the dais, but you have a pulse that you want to make sure that's getting checked because you're hearing from the community when you run. So I want to make sure that when the new council members come on board, we welcome new ideas to at least be heard, and just help them be guided to the categories that are already outlined. And if the categories need to change, we should look at it, not necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater, but let's look at it. Let's examine it. So I just want to thank staff for being very patient with me when I came along with new ideas, and I look forward to who else is coming on the dais. And I think the staff is doing a great job on pushing a lot of really important projects that impact our community.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Marquez.
I just want to echo my appreciation, and I just love seeing the evolvement of the priorities. I know that the core themes have, for the most part, stayed the same. We obviously have elaborated with new leadership, ideas, vision, and checking in with the community in terms of what they feel is important. So along with this, I haven't had a chance to pick up my budget. I'm sure it's over 400 pages. I'll be picking it up tomorrow to read and highlight. But I just hope that since the priority list of over 70 projects is expansive, I truly hope that if there isn't strong recommendations in the budget to fill vacancies, there is a concrete plan, because these ideas are great, but obviously we cannot implement them without key staff. So I just feel that strongly they go hand in hand. We got to have the funding to obviously approve these projects, and just really appreciate the historical perspective of kind of how we have evolved as a community in terms of being more responsive, and just again ask that the community be patient with us. Yes, it's 78 projects, but as was mentioned, a certain amount will be worked on this year. Doesn't mean they come off the list. It's just a matter of being able to get to it in terms of staffing and funding. So I really appreciate everybody's work on this, and happy to not move the item, but vote on approving it. I do have one question. I do want to acknowledge the community members that have been calling about smoke-free multi-housing. I appreciate their advocacy efforts, and I know staff will be working on a memo, but I don't recall, do we have a timeline on when that memo will be coming back to council?
There was no set timeline in the staff report,
Okay, so I would like to see if we're almost, feels like already mid-May, even though it's the first week. So I would ask if at all possible that it come back to us in the fall, if that's doable with everyone's work plan. Hopefully we can have that information to decide on how to proceed. Thank you.
I think that seems reasonable. We can probably do that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm seeing a nod from the city manager here in the chamber, so I think she's agreeable to doing that.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay, and Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Thomas, for, one, presenting and then also hosting us and kind of walking us through that entire exercise earlier this year. I think that, well, I'm just going to say, I think the frustration is always, with wanting to prioritize a new idea. And, one of the things that I think that is missing a little bit in this conversation is not necessarily timelines, but impact, right? So for example, some of the things that we have, and I've said this even last year, as let's say priorities or part of this plan, I do feel that staff can work on it without us saying that, it's a priority for council per se, right? So for example, a lot of the internal stuff, that's, we entrust the city manager to kind of make sure that, certain things are taken care of and so forth. So, I still think that we need to kind of focus on what is policy initiated efforts versus what are kind of the standard to-dos that we always have to do, whether it's because it's state mandated, whether it's because this is, something that we've historically just pushed. But I don't think that that's clear enough on some of the strategies. So hopefully in the future, we can kind of highlight that a little bit more. But other than that, I think that, this strategy session, there's so much to do. And I guess staff has also said there's not enough people to do it, right? So, if we can get our department staffed up as a priority, I think that's incredibly important. And then obviously it takes a couple weeks, if not a month or two, to train some folks up. So just kind of keeping us abreast of, which departments you guys are focused on. If there's a release of, hey, these applications are up and out, or we're focused on right now public safety. The next we're focused on maintenance. I feel like that strategy really works when you're limited in time. So, in my personal life, if you will, that tends to work, and it's also very convenient for the departments too, right? Because they know that they're going to be prioritized for that month or that, next 2 months or so forth. So just having some of those efforts out there, and then also training up. One of the things that I did not, and maybe in the organizational health as well, is, and I spoke to our city manager about this earlier today too, cybersecurity, right? Making sure that we are fully funded to engage in any type of situation that takes place, that are privacy. And again, I have to highlight that security and privacy are two very different things. So just making sure that as much as we are absorbing information and so forth, that is protected, but then also just our whole infrastructure as a city is protected. This is going to cost a significant amount of funds. So I do just want to make sure we are prioritizing that as well as every other effort. So other than that, I do appreciate this. And I think that the roadmap is decent moving forward, and happy to support it.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just add on good comments tonight. I think that sounds like we're generally supportive of the motion and of moving this, approving this roadmap that we work together to develop. Some things that came up this evening, I do think it would be a good idea to get a report sometime on the vacant properties. You talked a little bit about that, and we did that a while ago and haven't really seen, what the results have been. So I hate to add work to a very busy staff, but.
I think what we can do is maybe just take the report we did to the Economic Development Committee and create an informational item for council out of that. And just
that would be fine.
That along.
Great.
I think that would be relatively easy, and maybe include also the PowerPoint that was done at Economic Development. So.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be good. And I think we have been hearing a lot lately about the smoke-free multi-housing. I know there are challenges with that, and I know it's probably a lot of work and a lot of outreach, and it's going to be, but, the more I hear from people, the more I, realize that it's a potentially serious health problem. And, we've come a long way since I was a child in the area of smoking. not that I smoked when I was a child, but everybody around me did. And I wonder how much smarter I might be today, or, healthier if I hadn't grown up in that environment. So anyway, I take that to heart, that we are getting a lot of concerns about that. And we have a lot of multifamily housing in Hayward. So I'll have to weigh in on the title. I would actually make it longer. Confront climate crisis and champion. I would say champion environmental, either quality or protection and justice. So, but you don't have to take that. It would make the title even longer and really, outsized compared to the other ones. But I do think that element of environmental quality or protection is not in that current title. And while I think that environmental justice is also important, I just wanted to bring back that environmental protection aspect of it. I know that is in a lot of what we do anyway. So, and then I'll just have to make a pitch for my cultural commission again, which I know we've talked about a lot. The project and the roadmap has to do with public art. I think also, though, in terms of organizational strength, that, we heard from employees earlier this evening that, I know COVID has brought a lot of changes and, working conditions that are different and added stresses. And we really ask a lot of our employees, and they deliver. And it's amazing what they deliver. And I'm just so thankful. But sometimes you have to shift things around a little. And I just don't think those concepts of our arts funding, our events, cultural activities belongs in the community services department, but rather in, I've talked to the city manager a little bit, and she has some ideas, and actually maybe people from a couple of different departments. I think the library, I think the economic development certainly has an interest in that, and facilities. So, I would hope that we could take that out of, where it is now in community services, and come up with a little bit better way to look at those at the arts and culture of our community. So, but it doesn't need to be a change in the roadmap. It just, needs to be looked at by staff to see if we could move, shift some things around. But anyway, I'm happy to join in supporting the motion that was made by, let me remember, it was made by Councilmember Salinas and seconded by Councilmember Zermeño. And so if there are no further comments, and I see no hands raised, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Let's get to work. Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Zermeño.
Aye.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and the motion passes with 7 aye votes. And that brings us to the last item, numbered item on our agenda, and that is number 13, the adoption of resolutions accepting a $2,647,000 Caltrans grant and authorizing the city manager to execute a contract amendment with Ross Drulis Cusenberry Architecture for project phasing for the Stack Center, and also getting an update on that project. So, City Manager McAdoo, take it away.
And again, as I mentioned, I'm going to turn it over to our analyst, Mary Thomas, who will do the presentation this evening. Just want to give some really huge kudos to her and the work that she's done, and the staff team, particularly on the securing the grants from both our legislators, Caltrans. We've got a couple grant applications pending, so very exciting that we're able to start moving forward and start construction this fall, or I guess not this fall, but start working towards construction. So, which seemed like crazy dream just a few short years ago. So I will turn it over to Ms. Thomas.
Great, thank you. And I'm gonna share my screen. And go full screen. Oh, it's loading. Hopefully that shows up soon because it is a large. It's not loading, is it? Okay, let me try that one more time. It is a large presentation, so hold on.
Doesn't like that at this late hour.
I didn't like it. Apparently, it was too big. Let's try and then.
There we see something.
Okay. There we go. Okay, great. So this is, it's been a while. I know the mayor is very familiar with this project because I do see her more often at the governance group meetings, but it's been a while since we've done an update to the full council. So we're excited tonight to give you an update. So just some background, just to remind you, for those of you who haven't seen this in a bit, this is a long time community dream. The existing center there was taken over by the Eden Youth and Family Center in the late 70s. And then at some point along the line, the city did purchase that center to kind of keep it afloat. And the Eden Youth and Family Center has been a tenant since then. In 2014, the county allocated $9.6 million towards this. And then shortly after, the governance group formed to kind of help steer the project forward. And the governance group selected joint operators, La Familia and Eden Youth and Family Center, to be the future operators of the center in 2018. And then RDC, Ross Truist Kusenberry, for design in 2019. So we have been working closely with RDC and all the different partners for the last 3 years, since 2019, during the pandemic, and have completed the design developments and are excited to give you this update. So on that note, the design update, the construction documents. So we're done with the design. The construction documents are almost complete. They're over 95%. We've already submitted for the development permits and expect to complete them soon. We're almost done with everything on that checklist. And then we just put out an RFP for construction management firm this week. So we'll have that by midsummer. So that's all moving forward. These are just some of the designs. I just wanted to point out, one of the major things people wanted to see was a connection to Tennyson Park. So one of these images shows kind of, there's that tunnel that goes under the center back to the park, and a paseo that people can walk through. This is one of these images, is the waiting room for the clinic. The pediatric clinic will be on one side, and then the other side, it'll be a shared waiting room, will be the behavioral health clinic for La Familia. And then down below is a cafe was actually the #1 thing that community members asked for in this neighborhood. There's no cafe really in that corridor. And so this cafe will have an external facing counter, as you can see here. It will also face into a large multi-purpose room next to on the other side of the cafe that can be set up for big events. We also wanted to mention that we did do an exciting youth participatory design process for this project. If you haven't yet, I'll give a brief update on that, but there were 19 participants. They all agreed to do it virtually because we were unable to do it in person. It took place over 5 months, and they all got $500 stipends to thank them, but they did an awesome job. They did photojournalism, they wrote stories, some great things. These are actually, they each worked with a muralist to create self-portraits of themselves showing something they wanted to exemplify in the new center. So these are some of those. And so some of the priorities that really came out of that process, I think, especially during COVID, people were feeling very isolated and wanting active public spaces where young people can connect and celebrate. There was a lot of conversation about festivals of lights. I feel there's people from different cultures talking about Diwali and Dia de los Muertos and different sort of big festivals and wanting to see more of that. Conversely, a lot of discussion about needing more sanctuaries, about living in crowded conditions with their siblings, 3 people to a room, and so wanting to have natural spaces that can be sanctuaries for them. And then a diverse range of recreational opportunities. and really a focus on strength and resiliency was the number one, I think, takeaway that they wanted us to put into the design of the building. So that's an update on the youth participatory design process. Budget and fundraising, we regularly get cost estimates as we go through the design process, so we can kind of sense how much this project's going to cost. It's been very volatile because of inflation and supply costs, but what this is based on, the 47 million is based on a cost escalation of 14% that was given us for this year. We have no idea where that will go for next year. And we did receive 3 grants this year. And one of them, as Kelly mentioned, was from the federal government. One was from the state general fund, and then the Caltrans grant that you're hearing from tonight. We are also, I saw the library director on the call. We applied for a very large grant from the California State Library, $10 million. We'll hear in June or July. If we were to get that or any part of that, that would be really a game changer for this project. So fingers crossed. And then finally, we have hired a fundraising firm, Partner Resources Group. We have our first steering committee meeting tomorrow morning. Their role in this project is to interview kind of potential donors, potential industry leaders in and around Hayward, and get a sense of who might be interested in this project, how we can best market it to them, and they'll give us a report on that. This is a very detailed, I'm not going to go through this. The main takeaway from this is that we have 24 million out of the 47, and we need another 22.7 million for the full project. So the Clean California grant is the one that received from Caltrans, and we're asking for you to accept it tonight. It must be spent by June 2024. So that's a pretty quick turnaround. And fortunately, it's mostly external site work. So we do believe that we can definitely make that construction timeline. It's a Caltrans grant, so they mostly want to see these external work. And then it has 3 public art elements. There'll be 2 murals, one with a theme of multicultural recreation opportunities that will go on the entrance to the gym. We're changing the entrance to the gymnasium at MJCC to the east side. One will be on indigenous food heritages from around the world. These all came out of the youth design process. And then finally, a sculpture about the strength of diverse families supporting one another. So we're proposing to, in order to meet that grant deadline of June 2024, as well as to keep up some of this momentum that we've been getting for fundraising, we're proposing to phase the project into 2 parts. And so there is a cost associated with this, because in order to phase it, we have to go to bid twice, and the architect needs to go back to their designs and change a few things just so that it can go out to bid twice. But we do have sufficient funding for the South Campus work. So that's the work that we showed in the previous slide, and I have another picture here. So the proposed phase 1 would be doing all the renovations to the Matt Jimenez Community Center. We can move the Child Care Center over to the Matt Jimenez Community Center, then reconfiguring all the parking, and then you'll see there's a section that juts out to Tennyson Road. That's a utility line that we would need to run. And then installing this community events plaza, which is closest to us in this picture, which butts up against Tennyson Park. And then the nice thing about the community events plaza, it is pre-wired and has all of everything we need for a farmer's market, which was a huge request, and can serve as an outdoor market. It's all set up electricity wise and with drainage and everything for that. And so I know that's been something that council's been interested in. So we'll move forward with that. And then I wanted to also mention on that note that there is a commercial kitchen in the Matt Jimenez Community Center. And we will be bringing a report to you fairly soon on a grant that we received to do some master planning around food work. And All In Eats Alameda County, which the city joined back in November, they're interested in partnering with us to maybe do some work in that kitchen. So we'll be coming back to you guys to talk about that a little bit more. So that's all happening on the MJCC side. And then the second phase would be demolishing and rebuilding all of the Eden Youth and Family Center, those orange buildings. So these are I'm showing here the operators and the providers. As I mentioned earlier, La Familia and Eden Youth and Family Center were the selected operators in 2018. That contract actually at this point has expired. So we are talking to them again about sort of their goals. The project has evolved over the last 5 years, and talking to them kind of about their business plan, and we'll be creating a new MOU for them moving forward. And then just also wanted to mention that we do have plans for all the different providers to be able to stay open during construction. There's 2 that will need to be moved. That's Eden Youth and Family Center's Computer Clubhouse and Alameda County Office of Ed. But we will work with them to find a space that will work for their members. So tonight there's 2 actions. One is to accept the Clean California grant. And then the second resolution is to authorize the city manager to execute an amendment to RDC's contract so that they can phase the designs into 2 sets so that we can go to bid for that first set. We would be going to bid in October. So we could start breaking ground as soon as November or December. And that is the end of the presentation.
Great, thank you. Questions first from council. Councilmember Zermeño.
Thank you, Mayor. Monica, thanks for the presentation. Very good job. 2 questions. So there will be a coffee shop, cafe. That's excellent. We've been requesting that for quite a few years. Any thought of having a bicycle repair shop? That's also been something that's been requested. Any thoughts on that? Has that been mentioned at all?
Yes, so we don't have there's several spaces that can be flexibly programmed. So there's a maker space, and then there's a large multi-purpose room that has the ability to have storage for various things. So it wouldn't be permanently set up as a bicycle repair shop, but I know that Alameda County Office of Education has indicated interest in maybe providing some classes around that. They've also had interest in providing like barber courses in becoming a barber and some different things like that. And so we've tried to design the spaces so that they could accommodate those types of activities if we had a provider for that.
Okay.
So if you know a provider, let us know.
There's also been, I've been requested from you, or I've received some emails from a ballet folklorico group and the youth mariachi group that Juan Varela from the city of Hayward leads, and he's the instructor, and they're always out there looking for a space where they can practice. Is that something that's possible in this center? They go to schools, and the schools kick them out, and then they go to the school cafeterias, and then the school cafeteria says, well, you can't do this anymore. So this may be a good place for that to happen. So is that something that you can include in the negotiations and the planning?
Yeah, so I think we will be bringing back more discussion around the operations of the center and exactly what you're talking about, because I think there's been so much it's taken so long for us to get momentum and getting it built that that people haven't wanted to commit to maybe being part of the building. It's still going to be a couple years away till we see anything. But we are hoping as soon as we raise funding for phase 2 and have kind of more of a sense of schedule to do something like an RFP to get like what community organizations are interested in being on this spot, which ones might want to rent a space for a few days a week or, need a space, and then come back to council and ask you guys what your priorities are. So that we can make sure that that's in the MOU with the operators, so we know the right programs are getting space.
Right. And both of these groups probably just require or need a normal size classroom. And then my last question is, the building, the new center is 2 stories, correct?
Yes, so the north side of the campus will be a 2-story building, and the clinics will be on the 2nd story.
It just seems like there's less square footage to be used than the present center. So it's just because it seems smaller, but it's 2 second stories. What is the comparison in square footage now to what is being proposed?
Yeah, it's actually similar in square footage, but if you've been to the existing center, there's quite a few classroom areas that they're not currently being used. So while the square footage is similar, I think the usability of all the spaces will be much higher.
Okay, so every time I call over there looking for space for these groups to practice, they tell me that they can't because they're filled up. So we need to be careful and make sure that we provide enough space. I noticed that the plans have a lot more room for cars and parking, so that may be something that we can do away with. Thank you for the report.
Okay, we'll go to Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me, I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm really excited about this. So I am writing an email to Mary and Kelly and just thinking of more and more people we need to outreach to. So thank you for this update. It's amazing to see the great work. But let me ask my question. So I think I saw a visual, but I didn't hear. I know early on I had asked that there be a room that is capable to hold council meetings, public meetings, just creating that space. I know we've had a few council meetings in South Hayward, but really trying to focus on bringing City Hall to you and just designing the building so it's equipped to not just have council meetings, but maybe school board, HARD, other community governing bodies or just other nonprofits to use that space. So can you speak to that? That's the picture I saw. Yes, it's beautiful.
And of course it went. We'll get there. There we are. Yes, so this is a space that was designed exactly for that purpose. It's a multi-purpose space that the windows you're seeing open onto Tennyson. So the idea is that it can feel like a storefront. And as I mentioned, one of those little cubbies that you see to the left actually opens to the cafe. So if you have a big event here, you could cater it through the cafe. And the idea, and it will be set up for live streaming. All of the tech our audio video team are working closely with the designers for that. All the tech will be there. There will be a desk on the campus where can be streamed onto KHRT and different things. And then as you might be able to tell, this room can be divided just like the room in the library into 2 rooms, which could be used as 2 classrooms. So
awesome. And what's the capacity maximum? Do we know?
The capacity, oh God, I can look that up for you. I think what we're seeing here is 100 chairs.
Okay, so is that like equivalent to the council chambers? I don't know what the seating.
It's equivalent to the council chambers, yeah. But I'll look up for you exactly what the different configurations could be.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll come back here to Chambers and Council Member Lamnan. It's getting late.
It's getting late. It's okay. So yes, I share Councilmember Marquez's enthusiasm. Definitely feet not touching the ground. Super excited about this project. And just a couple questions. Did you say, Mary, that the ACOE and Computer Center would move out temporarily, permanently? I apologize.
No, just temporarily. No, we're trying to keep as many of the providers in place while we do construction as possible. But they were kind of the least easy to move is the clinic, the pediatric clinic. So we're going to build around the clinic until the very last moment. But those 2 programs, we felt that they could probably find a temporary space while construction's happening. So we're going to work with them, and then they'll move right back in.
No, that's great. I'm glad to see them both retained, and appreciate the need there. And then the last question I had for the moment is, on the parking lots, has there been discussion of putting solar in?
Yes, there will be. It's a zero net energy facility per city code, and there will be solar over over most of one parking lot.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay, and Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. For everybody watching and listening, I just want to say this is Miss Mary Thomas who's presenting, and you have been doing an excellent job, and just kind of making sure that this project goes forward, if you will. I did want to ask, Councilmember Marquez asked the question, but I didn't hear the answer. How big is the capacity
of that room?
Let's say the largest configuration.
I think that I'm not going to be able to answer that question. I know it's over 100 people, but let me get you guys a clear answer on. And are you thinking for like an event where you're seating and looking forward, because it's going to be different versus like having tables with a setup?
Let's eventually get both of them, right?
Okay.
And the reason why I say this is because, so for example, the city of Fremont really invested in the Fremont Event Center. It's in downtown. And I was at an event and so many people complained that this was too small for community events, right? And I'm kind of thinking that 100 is also too small, right? So if there's a potential way, you know, those at Cal State East Bay, they have it, I don't know what it's called, but it's like retractable walls.
Where you mean between different rooms?
Yeah. So instead of like, you could have 3-4 rooms, and then if you remove the walls, it's like a room that can fit like 500 people, or it's a retractable wall in some capacity, right? I think that is something to, if it's not too late, to kind of consider. And the reason why is because, you know, we just also recently had a bunch of people ask for, completely not related, but like a cricket field, right? And with the changing, you know, the higher population coming into the city of Hayward, the amount of housing that's going on, the changes in the residents and so forth, I'm just projecting that we're kind of short selling ourselves a little bit if it's too small, right? And so what can we do? What is the makeup of the ground? You know, how is, depending on the types of events, right? You know, have we thought about the different types of event? One is lecture style. One is, you know, a celebration of some sort. You know, we want to make sure that people can come here, do things here, rent it out, do whatever they need to do, right? Get the mission accomplished, if you will, right? So I just want to think of like different, making sure if we can vet that out a little bit further, and think about long-term in 5 years when the city of Hayward has a lot of its developments that we've been approving kind of already done, and there is a large event, right? We don't really have that capacity in anything unless somebody rents out a hall, like a true hall, right? So I just want to highlight that. I do appreciate the efforts, you know, on the fundraising piece. Can you reference how much is left?
In the gap?
Yeah.
Yeah, the gap is 22 million.
Okay.
Our fundraising goal for the the contract that we have, the private fundraiser, their fundraising goal is 11.4 million, which they think that that's realistic. And then we do have that large grant for the state library. We'll see if we get that. But that would be, yeah. So that's where we're
Okay.
at.
So total is what?
47 mil.
Okay, that's a lot. Has it grown in the last? I feel like
the total gap is 22. The total project cost is 47. Yeah, and yes, it has. It's growing. There's been some cost escalation in the last 2 years due to COVID and basically supply chains.
Yeah, because the last time I could have sworn it was around 15 million-ish, right? So I feel like it has grown a little bit, but you know, this is just based off memory. If you were here at the beginning of the call, you had you know, a group that was calling to support something that's happening in the Silicon Valley, right? Have we been reaching out to other cities, other let's say organizations that could potentially provide a grant of some sort, even if it's, you know, 25,000, 250,000, 500,000, in other cities and organizations that belong to other cities, because we are a regional effort in the East Bay?
Yeah, so that's our, I mean, we've done as much as we can as staff, and we've hit up against the reality that we are government staff and this is not not our expertise. So that is why we brought in this private fundraiser and firm to work with us. And so what they're doing for us right now is helping connect us to people who are potential high donors, or there are industries that might, for whatever reason, have a stake in this and want to have conversations with us. So they're trying to open some doors for us. So we'll keep you posted on how that goes.
Okay. Other than that, again, I don't have any further comments. I just hope that we can kind of make at least whatever the largest configuration is, pretty larger than what we have.
So I'll definitely get you guys back those numbers. And the other thing that I didn't show, and I just was looking through if I could find a picture, is that multi-purpose room then spills out into an outdoor amphitheater. And the outdoor amphitheater can actually project movies back on the building. And so there's sort of a large indoor-outdoor space, but I'll get you all the numbers for capacity.
Okay, perfect. And again, I appreciate all the work that you and your team is doing. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, I don't see any other council questions. So I will open public comment on this item. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment? Nope, no, we actually, okay, and I don't see that we have anybody online, let alone anybody wanting to make a public comment. So I will close public comment and go to Councilmember Lamnon, Mayor Pro Tem Lamnon.
Thank you. As I said, so excited about this project. It was said well when you introduced it about this being a dream and kind of a pipe dream at that. And having stood in the park and talked to people about what was needed in the community, having had conversations about the need for a plaza, just so many dreams are in this plan, and I really appreciate the city staff who've been calling that, and the leadership team have been stewarding it and so on. I love the involvement of the youth, and we often have electeds, and certainly Supervisor Valle and his instigation, and Ginny on walls of when things are actually built. But I'd also love to see the youth and perhaps their murals retained on this, because their voice was important in this process too. And if you see your way clear to adding a few emeritus council members, that wouldn't be bad either. But and then I had a few suggestions, and then I will talk about the motion part. I think these are already, and Mary, I know how big your plate is and how full it is, but I'm going to add ideas. Some of these you've heard before, but just that Senator Wachowski may be somebody that the fundraiser can reach out to. The Hayward Rotary Club is 100 years old this year and did do the Silva Clinic, and so maybe could be a partner in helping fund, not at the $1 million level, but perhaps at the 100,000 level. I'm not committing club funds. I'm just throwing that out there as ideas.
We'll take it.
There, as I sit up here with the other 3 Rotarians, I'm not committing club funds myself, I promise. I think we had talked in the past maybe about kind of a memorial grove. I think about Dave McEwen, I think about Betty DeForest and Gail Steele, who were instrumental in this facility, and partly as the people tied to them in terms of the fundraising, and thinking about, I think I mentioned this in the past, about a labyrinth, and maybe the fundraising, if fundraising bricks are part of the fundraising strategy, maybe they shape a labyrinth. Maybe that's a way to get to that without a huge extra cost. But there isn't one to walk in South Hayward, and I think that would be great. We often talk about the celebrities that are from Hayward, and The Rock probably needs to put his mark here somewhere. Anyway, I think you mentioned that there would be good Wi-Fi in the facility, and I appreciate that being built in from the start. I was at a HARD meeting recently where they talked about, apparently there's stands that have bicycle repair tools, like kind of on them and attached. Might be something we look at for the park. And there's an organization called Fix It Clinic that is in the Alameda County Library System that will help repair lots of things. And they sort of have a network of volunteers that do this kind of work. I hear the need for co-working space as a potential revenue stream, as a need in the community. Really just, again, super excited about this work, super excited about and super grateful to you, Mary, for keeping it moving forward, and to everybody else who's been working on it. I would love to make a motion, but I'm actually going to defer to Councilmember Marquez, who I suspect would like to make this motion.
Okay, and she is next, Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Lamnin. I'm just really, really excited about this. It's just amazing to see the design, to know that this is actually going to happen for our community. That center is near and dear to many of us. It's, a place we've gone for resources, for refuge. It was my introduction to volunteerism and just at the computer club. And there's just so many valuable services there. So to know that it's going to be expanded upon, and I just want to echo all the comments and the amazing ideas that Councilmember Lamnin raised. I think obviously this is going to continue to evolve, but making the emphasis of incorporating our youth is key, but also wanting to keep in mind our elders, having space for them to feel safe as well is going to be instrumental. Really just want to see this be a multi-generational project. I sent an email to all of you already. I'm committed to do what I need to do as a council member. I will commit dollars, not ready to say the amounts, but it will be, it'll make a nice little dent. So I hope that we can all join in those fundraising efforts, and anything that we can do to support these efforts. Would love to see this get fast tracked, and, want to be there for the ribbon cutting. So thank you, Mary, your team, for the amazing work. And I am happy to move this item.
And I'm going to second this item, having been part of this, the planning for this project for the last 8 years or so. But thank you. Let's see, we'll go now, though, to Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you again to Management Analyst Mary Thomas for your presentation. And I am very excited as well about this project. Mayor Pro Tem Lamnin kind of stole my public art thunder, but I'm more than happy to hear more council members speak on that. So I did want to acknowledge those artists in some capacity. So if we can, if that art can't be put on that building, maybe there's another opportunity for that art to be shared in the city in some form or fashion. So I think you should link up with maintenance or someone else on how to make that happen, because it's very beautiful and it actually complements very nicely what the artist did at Chabot with the mural there. So I think we should try to expand it maybe as a possible theme throughout our city and make it a tourist destination for us to have photos in front of those beautiful pieces of art. So just wanted to say that I agree with the size of the conference room. I know the bigger room, the more dollars it needs to be raised. So I know that's going to be an impact. So I don't know if we want to think about that. I did hear a that's right, so I'm assuming that's right. So I just want to make sure that when we expand the square footage, we know the cost per square footage and all that. So just making sure that's being realized when we make that request. And just really, again, want to highlight what Councilmember Marquez said with elders. There is a lot of focus on youth. Definitely want to piggyback on that and also offer just more care for newborns. I'm very excited that we're going to keep that as a amenity for the community. If we can do more on the weekends, some more support, more classes, whatever we can. If there's more organizations that can share that space, help with some of the cost sharing on the weekends, please consider that. Also, I was curious about some of the fundraising efforts. I know that's not your main focus, but wanted to know if fundraisers are looking at opportunities where they, sell off pavers, or if they sell off benches, name rooms, do those kinds of things that can kind of expedite those fundraising dollars. I mean, we can do it tastefully. I really like how Mia's Dream incorporated a lot of the donors there. So if we can link up with the Heart to see how they made that happen. But yes, I'm very excited about the movie screen. I know that that's something that the city does and Heart does, but to have a go-to destination for that's permanent, that's a great feature for the community. So I'm very excited to hear all the things that are happening with this space. If I agree with a lot of the comments that Councilmember Lamnin made, as well as Marquez. And I do think Councilmember Zimmerman brings a good point regarding the bike stations. I do think we need to figure out how to make that, if not necessarily flexible, not just flexible, but make it a feature that's highlighted. I think there is a way to do it. And so I was curious if they were going to have any kind of bike storage at this facilities or bike lockers. Is that something that was being discussed?
Do not think that we have any bike lockers in the plans. We definitely have bike in places to lock your bike, but in terms of more secure bike lockers, I can ask, but I don't think I saw any.
Yeah, just that makes sense to have bike locks in a location like this. But if this is spaces that people may actually work in all day, I know there might actually be requirement as part of your design, but I would just double check that and maybe do extra, just because I imagine people might want longer storage there depending on how long they're there. So just something to consider. But I can go on and on about this project. So I'm just really excited to see the design, and I look forward to working with the city on how to make this happen.
And Mayor, if I may,
Go ahead.
I really appreciate and respect Mayor Pro Tem Lamnin's willingness to defer to me, but respectfully, I do want to defer to you. I know that I've sat in on a committee meeting on your behalf in the past, and I know how much you've worked to make this a reality. So I'll have opportunities in the future to weigh in. So I'll do the second, and you could do the motion.
Really? You'll let me do the motion then? I mean, I could have said that. Well, that's very nice of you. Not necessary, but we can change that around. Okay, so the motion by the mayor, Barbara Halliday, seconded by Councilmember Marquez. But I would like to say a few things. I really appreciate all the comments, and I think that it has been too long since we brought this back to you, Council, and really let you know what's going on. And I think there were a lot of good suggestions here, and a lot of them might really be, we might be able to work them in. I don't think we can enlarge, the buildings at this point, or, change the nature of the space. And as Councilmember Wahab, I do appreciate what you had to say about we need an event space. This is not going to be that, although there will be, as Mary pointed out, room to, have some events, but this is a youth and family center, and it's going to be very much oriented, as is the current Eden Youth and Family Center, to education and health care. Tiburcio Vasquez is going to have a strong presence, and there's a behavioral health clinic, and then of course there will be continuing education on the premises. The county Office of Education, I think, will continue to have some educational facilities there, and Eden Youth Center, obviously, as well, is continuing to be a part. So, but I hope that we can raise the rest of this money. You're right, the cost has gone up. I mean, the cost of all construction has gone up, particularly in the last couple of years. We had been looking at more of a originally more of a $30,000 budget. It's up to $47,000 now. And so, but with the big contributions that we have received, I really believe that in this day, with all the emphasis right now on the need to invest in communities like this one, a wonderful community, a very diverse, community, but also a lower income community, part of our city. And there's just a lot of recognition by people who have a lot of money out there, foundations that want to invest in this kind of thing. I think the drawings are exciting. The participation we've gotten from you. So I have a lot of optimism that we are going to finish that. But I do think a lot of good suggestions were made tonight by my colleagues that we can take back to the governance group for further discussion. And hopefully we are really on a roll now and on track to get this project done after a decade at least of planning. And with that, it's late. But we should really bring back more, maybe isn't informational items, but when we get some significant, contributions maybe, or any changes or developments, that we bring back to council, bring it back to council as an informational item. So with that, on the motion, oh, I'm sorry, yes. Councilmember Zermeño.
Thank you. This is tremendous for the Tennyson corridor, and the center itself. Let's see, I played basketball at that court for 20 years, and I was a board member of the Youth and Family Center, and we had a business 2 blocks away from there, a video rental place, and our home has always been 2 blocks from Tennyson Road. So this is South Hayward, I think, is the benefit, and all the folks who live on that area will benefit from this. And I wish we could make those buildings a little bit larger with less parking, because we're trying to get away from parking, but here we are. If you notice, a lot of parking there, but this is tremendous. What staff has done for the planning and my colleagues here voting for it is tremendous. So thanks. And thank you to Marilyn Bacon-Madsen, who was the director, and to Betty DeForest, and to Gail Steele and Paul Frumpkin. All those folks really deserve some recognition. And my last note is I will be the first to plunk $100 for a brick. Mm-hmm. So
not a bad
we can
idea.
start selling bricks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they really can raise some funds.
There actually is I think it's more of a wall, right, Mary, that they've been sort of advertising for.
Yeah, the architect has put in a design for a donor wall. It actually has a lot of similarities to the donor wall at the library, the community donor wall. And it would be sort of in the lobby area, etched in the glass. But that's not set in stone. So if you guys are really, really excited about bricks, we can talk to the architect.
And Mary, my apologies. I've been calling you Monica all evening, so my apologies.
No worries. It's late, I know. Yeah.
All right, and colleague Lamnett's idea as to what can go there are very good. So let's follow those.
Okay, thank you. So again, with that, I don't know, there was something you said that I was going to comment on, but it is late. So I will ask Madam City Clerk to please call the roll for the vote.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Lamnet.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
See.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and the motion passes with 7 aye votes. So we just got another $2,647,000. Well, that was counted in already. I think they assumed we were going to approve that, but you've got it now. So, and we will bring more frequent reports back to council about how things are going. And so with that, that brings us to council reports and announcements. Yes, go ahead.
I appreciate all the collaboration tonight as we all make motions, and just really wanted to honor the fact that there are strong ties throughout this council to the South Hayward community, to the strategic planning efforts, and so on. And so it's really exciting to see so many things that many of us have been involved in for decades coming to fruition. So cheers to all.
All right. Sorry.
Mayor, I want to
go ahead.
we have a minimum required for council members and it not be $100, but we'll debate that later. But I'm just teasing, but seriously, we need to raise some serious money. So hopefully we could figure out a strategy to get more involved. So
Yes.
yes.
I'll raid our piggy bank if she wants more than $100 for a
Dig
break.
deep. Dig deep.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know
your
how I am
pockets.
about asking for money, Francisco. Like,
When we started talking about the center, it was $24 million, so it's really grown up.
If anybody's got
I
a
have an
spare
announcement, Mayor.
22 million,
Oh, yeah. Remember, it was 24?
let them know about it. Okay.
My announcement.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, we don't meet next week. We do not meet next week. That means that we won't be able to announce Arbor Day, which happens on the 18th of May, and city staff will be planting some trees at Cesar Chavez Middle School at 12:30 and at 1:30. So if you would like to go over and get your hands dirty and help plant some trees, Wednesday, 12:30 at Cesar Chavez Middle School. Thank you very much, and go out and plant a tree.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, see no one. Then, okay. Our next meeting we will not be meeting a week from now, as Councilmember Zermeño said, on May 10th. But we will be meeting the following Saturday for our annual all-day budget session, which I know is something that we all look forward to, and especially staff. And it will be hybrid. It will be virtual. It will be all virtual, I believe. Isn't that? Yes, I'm seeing. So, anyway, that will be on Saturday, May 14th, and then we will meet again for our next regular meeting on Tuesday night, May 17th. And with that, and
Mayor,
thanks.
can I
Oh, yes,
take a
go
quick
ahead.
announcement? Sorry, I'm tired. I
Just under the
apologize.
wire here, but yes, go ahead.
Yes. Okay. No. So I just wanted to quickly thank all the mothers on City Council and the community. We are going to be observing Mother's Day, but not just people that actually play a role as a mother, but we have many nurturers on the council as well, and city staff. I think everyone has really gone above and beyond to look out for the community, especially in the last 2 years. So just hope that everyone could, as Councilmember Andrews mentioned earlier, practice self-care and maybe not do anything, like take a nap, go for a walk, take a bubble bath, but just truly want to acknowledge all the people out there that play a role in helping care for others in their lives. So enjoy your day on Sunday.
Yes, that's nice. It is coming up, isn't it? And we should remember the mothers. Councilmember Zermeño?
Go Warriors.
Yeah, I have, well, okay, yes, I agree with that. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.